Board previously met in closed session under exception C1, specific personnel, C11, pending or actual litigation, and C21, review and approval of previous closed session minutes. I'd like to call to order the May 17, 2022 Waukegan Public School Board of Education meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Mr. McBride? Ms. Callahan-Wozniak here? Ms. Leguizamo? Present. Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
President Ewing?
Here. So Miss Hannah is absent this evening, and Ms. Gonzalez is participating remotely due to an illness. So that is one of the allowable exceptions, and the board did vote to allow her to participate remotely during both open and closed session. And Mr. McBride has joined us at 6:12. I would then like a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Wozniak. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. We are back in open session. Next item on the list is our Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Ms. Massimo if you'd be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is our opportunity for public comment. Thank you, Mr. White. During public comment, individuals are allowed 3 minutes. If you need translation services will be provided to you, and you will receive an additional 3 minutes for a total of 6 to allow for the translation services. We do ask that you refrain from mentioning student or staff names in your remarks. With that, when I call your name, please come up to the microphone. First name on our list is Ray Vukovic. And Mr. Alajakis, I do need the password. Go ahead, Mr. Vukovic, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I'm here tonight just to kind of question why you need this special meeting tonight when you have 2 items on the agenda that really should be discussed first right after this at one of your committee meetings. That seems to be your strategy with so many other things. Why not talk about it at a committee meeting and then bring it to your next meeting? And what you're looking at here, your clock, because I could go on all night.
I know, it hasn't started. I wasn't going to say anything because I thought Lee hit it. I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Vukovic.
The items that you're approving here, you're going out, going to want to hire a search firm for hiring a high school principal. But then the other item has to do with changes at the high school. Shouldn't you wait until you get a new principal in and let he or she make those changes? Because I know in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, when the community says, are you going to bring back the small learning communities, the response is going to be, well, that's up to the new principal. So, let's try to be consistent on that kind of stuff. And you're going to do a big search for a principal. There are capable people in this district. Whether they want the job or not, I don't know. But just go back in the history books, and Miss Hannah would be the only one that is here that would remember. But if you go back over the last 19 years, you've had 3 principals that have come from the outside. One just left here at the employment a couple years ago. You had the one fellow that was in the military, and then you had the one from Farragut. And then there was another time when there were 2 retired interims that came in for a year. So over the last 19 years, you had a lot of outside folks come in. There were changes, good, bad, whatever. Always went back to people talking about the houses. That stayed there as the principals changed, the small learning communities. So, just keep that in mind as you go out. Just because you bring somebody in doesn't necessarily mean they're going to wave a magic wand and everything's going to be wonderful. Because you've got good talent at the high school right now, and you change things up too much, you're not going to be able to compare anything. So those are my comments to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. And I do apologize. I am still not able to get online. And that's for which one? Gotcha. All right. With that, that concludes our public comment. There are no other names listed. So if we get the agenda back for our special meeting. I want it on the screen for those to follow along with. Thank you. Next up is purchasing contracts, which is the approval contract with BWP and Associates.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent or her designee to sign and execute a contract with BWP and Associates to assist with the hiring process for a new co-lead principal at Waukegan High School.
Mr. Riddle, may I make a motion that we approve the recommendation made by the superintendent?
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second was by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion? So I guess my comment would be just one of the things with the search is we are late in the year. So we know this. We know we are up against the clock. And so we want to make sure that we get a nice pool of talent and that we find the right person for District 60. So if we do not find an individual or someone doesn't come up, I'm sure, and the board is committed that we will keep looking. We don't want to just hire anyone in such an important role, which is one of the reasons that we are looking for a search. But the time is we had a meeting, and instead of delaying by a week, we want them to be able to start now to put the things in order is because, time is of the immediate essence. And so that is the rationale. It wasn't that it hadn't been discussed. It was a personnel issue. As you all have been to meetings, it's been a very, very busy time for District 60. And so while this has been important, there have been other things that we've been working on. But now, a week wouldn't delay it. But the reason that we're moving forward is because every day is of the essence. And we want to be out there recruiting and seeing who the next leader is for our high school, which is a very important role. There are no other questions or comments on this item. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak? Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries, and we are now at 8A, which was the personnel approval of the high school department chair positions.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to approve 12 department chair positions as part of the high school transformation plan in the amount not to exceed $90,000 per position.
Mr. Riddle, I so move. We approve the recommended action by the superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Riddle. Second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion? Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Superintendent, if you can just kind of clarify here, are these going to be new positions, just kind of revision positions, or so what's currently in the high school now in regards to the chair positions for each of these departments, and how is this just a bit different?
Yep. I'm going to ask Deputy Cesario and Dan Hill to come up to the mic, please. Dan, I know that this was a big push of yours last year, so.
All right. Good evening, Board President, members of the board, superintendent, members of the community, colleagues. So these are new positions. So the reason why that they were put in place or we developed them is so that we can ensure that our teachers in those respective departments had support around implementing the curriculum, coaching, that it's something that they were asking for in our meetings with the union, during curriculum council, and in other instances. So yes, these are new positions, and they are ones that we feel are warranted in terms of the work we're doing around developing teaching practices and essentially just supporting teachers overall. Dan, would you like to, Principal Hill, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, just the piece I can add there, just perspective. We have at all three campuses, there's 541 staff members that work at the high school. Right now, the current structure, we have principal, 2 directors, and assistant principal, building base at each campus, managing all those different staff members. And so one of the things with all the things that we're having to manage and systems to put in place is we can't afford to have the feedback and quality of support for our teachers to keep stopping and starting because we're dealing with so many things. And so these department chairs are going to help to maintain that consistency. So that as we're managing all these various systems, that piece of our work will never end, because we're going to expound on it next week in our transformation presentation. But one thing that we're looking to do over the next 5 years to ensure that we have high quality instruction in every classroom every day, and this will help us to do that.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Those are all my questions, Board President.
And I think one of the questions that was raised as a relevant one is why make this decision now as opposed to waiting and seeing when the search is done, or what would be the rationale?
I
Why
think
get
that was an
this
excellent
now?
question, and I think that once we start talking more about the high school transformation plan and we unveil that, but it was part of a process. It was part of a process that was inclusive of teachers, admin, and staff members. It wasn't just a decision that was made unilaterally by Lincoln Center employees. It was, and I'm going to let Dan speak, Principal Hill, speak to this a little bit more from his perspective as well. But the whole process in developing this is hearing student voice, hearing teachers' voices, hearing site-based administrators, and making sure that their ideas were represented in what we're doing. And again, this isn't just something that was developed over this year. These ideas of having chairs and having folks in this position that can help to coach teachers, to help support teachers, to help reflect with their colleagues who have a shared understanding of that particular content area, was something that's been being discussed, that has been discussed for a number of years. But it's also part of this plan.
Deputy Cesario, I want to apologize to Mrs. Carter. I did not see you sitting there. So
I'm
please
sorry, I
know
didn't see you
we did not
either.
mean to
Sorry.
leave you out. So if both of you want to add to this, because I know you both want to get started on hiring your department chairs, and that's why this is so important to you both.
Yes, my
So
apologies, Principal.
do
I
wanna
didn't see you.
apologize.
Sorry. You both, please. Yes.
Yeah, we do have a co-principalship, and so there's myself, the co-principal at Brookside campus, and then our principal at ALEC. And so with myself and Mrs. Carter still being a part of the team, one of the major responsibilities that we have right now is to help put the team back together. So this can't happen simultaneously. And with the time being of the essence, the same justification for the principalship is that we want to attract and retain the highest quality of talent, so that we can move forward. So this needs to happen now.
Also, historically, the bulk, a lot of curriculum work and planning and hiring other teachers for vacancies in the various departments happens over the summer. So the sooner we can fill these positions, the sooner we can onboard the department chairs so that we can get a smooth start in August, and we're not trying to onboard 12 new administrators during the start of a hectic school year.
Okay, if there are no further questions. No? We got a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you all for listening.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak? Yes. Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez? Ms.
Yes.
Leguizamo?
Sorry, there's a delay, guys.
Yes.
And President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now, if I could have 9A, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions? Oh, sorry. Motion by Ms. Leguizamo. Second was Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions?
Well, just one comment. I like the diverse team that I just seen. I thought that was great.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned. If we can, who's first today? Is that you, Deputy Cesario?
It is.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't know what's going on with my technology, but with that, I'd like to call to order the April 19th, April 17th, 2022 Waukegan Public School Student Achievement Meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mrs. McBride?
I'm sorry.
Present.
Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Callahan Wozniak, Ms. Leguizamo,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Here.
President Ewing.
Here. All right. First item up is our approval of meeting minutes from April 19th, 2022. They are attached. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, questions, or corrections to the minutes? None? Seeing there are none, all in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right, we have information items that have been presented, and so I will let Deputy Cesario take the lead.
Okay, thank you again. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, members of the community, colleagues. So our first item, all of our items are informational items. I know there are some questions about some of these. The first item, item A, is is a possible approval for professional development for a conference for a team member at Brookside campus.
And just to be sure, I mean, sorry, question, Board President.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Thank you. And for the CTE, I know it's just for one employee at this time, but I thought I saw we had more CTE employees leave. So I'm just looking to see. Sorry, I know this.
It's just hard to hear. I'm sorry.
Really muffled here. I know. I apologize.
Yeah.
I have seen that the CTE department, there has been several employees that has left the CTE department, and I know this is just for one employee, but just looking to see in regards to the overall CTE department, is it full? Is there any other that we need to send out for certifications and so on and so forth?
Sure. So there are some vacancies for a couple of reasons, and we can discuss that at another time. But whenever professional development is requested by a team member, we always consider that, and we always try to be inclusive of anybody else that would like to attend it. So in this instance, I believe that we don't have any other folks that were.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thank you. I was just wanting to get that clarification. And this is just in regards to the Microsoft certifications, right? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for talking with me today. I'm Mary Molinar Stevens. I'm one of the CTE teachers at Brookside campus. I'm also instructional coach. And two of the CTE courses offer industry standard certification. One is in the Microsoft Office suite, and the other one is Introduction to Computers. So this conference, I actually requested it before the pandemic, and then everything happened. So this offers teachers who teach this course, these courses, a chance to interact with other teachers across the country, and actually it's a worldwide conference, about strategies they use in their classroom for increasing student success in these areas. Because students can take these certifications and put them on a resume or for a college application. And I'm really interested in talking with other teachers about how their strategies, about how they implement this with their students. The other piece is that there are other certifications that are available, and I thought that this would be a great way for us to learn more about those industry standard certifications.
And just really quick, does the Office suite also include Access?
Yes.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to know. Thank you. Those were all the questions, Board President.
Are there any other questions? And I forgot to mention this to the community, right? The format for this meeting is different than our normal meeting. So we just finished a meeting in which you had public comment. That was where individuals got 3 minutes to come up and address the board. At our committee meetings, you are able to raise your hand. We do ask same that you be respectful, but wait to be acknowledged by the chair. And then if there's a question that you have about the item, you can ask it and we can get clarification. So I typically start with the board, and then if there's a question on the item, I'll go to the community. I get we have some new faces, and not everybody comes to all the meetings and may not know the process, so I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. Go ahead.
Might I also add that the information is also presented on board docs, and it's public beforehand, so that we know that these items these are not presentations necessarily, but are information items. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows and it's clear that that information has been presented as well.
Definitely. So we have next item.
Can I make a comment? Sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
I support things like these, and I actually really appreciate that we're looking more toward integrating certifications not only for staff but also so that they can try to integrate these more CTE oriented strategies for students. So I mean, I really encourage community members who are always very critical of some of the professional development that we have our teachers do and our staff do to really look at the sessions that are in these conferences. You know, they're learning about artificial intelligence, helping students succeed in a technology-driven world, engaging computer science programs, but also, you know, how to help students enter underserved sectors like this. So I think there's a really huge value that we gain in having more of our staff go to things like this. And I'm hoping when, you know, they're picking and choosing their breakout sessions that they really target, you know, some of the ones with professionals coming from HBCUs and other technical colleges that are looking to serve demographics of students like ours. So, you know, I think this is a really cool opportunity, and I hope more staff members take advantage of it, because I hear students increasingly want to enter things like this, like game development, etc., but they just don't know where to start.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Next item on the agenda is 5B, the renewal of Youth Guidance BAM WOW for 2022-2023.
Yes, so this is a current program that we've been using for a few years now. We do have some representatives here, and then I'd also like to invite up Stephanie Jakimzik, our MTSS coordinator, as well as the Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Jennifer Rice de la Sanchez, so they can present some information, and then also to invite some of our guests up to really speak to the benefits of the program.
Not on that, Mr. White. That's for my comments, if you would be so kind. Yep, on that one, the Youth Guidance BAM.
Okay. Good evening, Board President, School Board Superintendent, colleagues. So, if you could hit the next slide. There we go. Next one. So this is just a summary of BAM and WOW through this school year. So currently, BAM services 4 middle schools and both high school campuses. Currently, WOW serves 1 middle school and Brookside campus. By the end of the week, there is hope that we have 2 more WOW counselors. One will be starting at Lewis and one at another middle school. Students are being referred to BAM and WOW by their counselors, by anybody, any staff member at any of the buildings, or parents, or even a self-referral. Currently, BAM and WOW are servicing groups of students at every single site that they see. In addition, the BAM and WOW counselors follow a curriculum provided to them by BAM and WOW. And currently there are 4 vacancies with 3 new hires that are pending for this school year and for the upcoming school year. So we are, next slide. We are asking for renewal for BAM and WOW, and we are asking the increase of staff members. We are asking that each program, BAM and WOW, has 9 counselors total. So each middle school will have 1 BAM counselor and 1 WOW counselor, with Brookside and Washington both having 2 of each, which will be an increase from what we had this year. If approved, this program will serve almost 1,000 students, 990 students, and the budget that we are requesting is if both programs are fully staffed. So we will not, district is not being charged if the services are not rendered for the next school year. Next slide, please. So these are just some statistics from BAM and WOW, and then we put together some attendance and referral data on each site. So currently, right now, BAM has 443 students, which they are 89% of the 495 goal that they had set out for this year. That gives you a breakdown of how many students they are seeing at each campus: 131 at Brookside, 60 at Lewis, 79 at Jack Benny, 70 at Juarez, 48 Smith, and then 7 at Washington campus. So at each of the sites at Juarez, 34 students decreased in the amount of referrals that they had from January to now. 15 of the students had their attendance approved just since January. So I ran the data from January to now. And same thing with Lewis. 7 students in BAM improved, 18 students decreased the number of referrals. At Brookside, we saw the biggest growth. 31 students in WOW, their attendance improved. 33 students in the WOW program, their referrals decreased and or got 0. 26 students in BAM at Brookside, their attendance has improved, and 48 students, the amount of referrals that they received had also decreased. Next slide. And these are just some highlights from BAM and WOW. So the BAM counselors took the kids on a college field trip. They went to U of I. So students from Juarez, Lewis, and Brookside attended a field trip to the University of Illinois, where they were able to experience a day in the life of a college student. They ate in the dining hall. They visited the African American Cultural Center and the Latina Cultural Center, and they took a tour with current college students. BAM currently is working with TRIO program, which helps provide college access support to first-generation college students. 30 Lewis and Juarez BAM students visited the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee in April. And again, where they took a tour of the campus, they were able to talk to admissions, and students worked with their counselors to process the trip and get excited about going to college, how the application process works, and get ready for college. There is that last bottom right picture is the WOW banquet hall that they just had a couple weeks ago, where they took 250 girls. Was it total? 5 from each school. So all the girls were able to kind of go to a banquet, which was really nice, and they can share. So I'm going to ask for the BAM and WOW counselors and the students to come up if they would like to say anything about their experiences, or if the board has any questions.
We'll let them come up and share their experiences here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody doing? I'm a BAM counselor at Jack Benny Middle School. My name is Malcolm Smith. I just started this year. Everything is going pretty good at Jack Benny. I like how it's going. I liked it so much that I moved here. After I seen how everything was going, I seen that the kids needed somebody, and I wanted to be that person. So I dedicate my time to moving here, and so I could give them my full attention. I have a student with me. His name is Logan.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Logan.
Hello. A little nervous.
Okay.
Take your time. Just tell me what you're doing.
I've learned a lot of things with this program, mostly responsibility and holding accountability for my actions. I've learned to show respect to people and to honestly just get things done in a timely manner. A little nervous still.
You're doing great.
But honestly, it's really helped me, and I've seen fellow classmates that have joined too that have improved their behavior and turning work in time, and it's really just improved everything at our school, I would say.
Did you go to Washington, D.C. this year with the...
I did,
Hey, congrats.
for school council,
Yeah.
and it was really, really nice. I've not traveled before, so it was interesting.
Great.
Good evening. My name is Will Scott, and I'm the BAM counselor over at the Brookside campus. This year has been an interesting year. I am very pleased with the relationships that I created with the youth. at the Brookside campus. There have definitely been some challenges in regards to attendance of students attending, but nonetheless, I'm definitely encouraged by the relationships and the way that the kids ended the year. A couple of things that I know I personally have discovered is through COVID, a decrease in hope. And my challenge has been to create hope back into a lot of the youth I also took the youth to the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the Brookside campus. I was a part of the U of I trip. Already have some future plans in regards to hopefully allowing them other opportunities outside of the state of Illinois as well. But I'm really encouraged, and I definitely think this program will look a lot different next year in regards to the youth that we serve and help. I also brought a student with me as well. He's pretty nervous, so not sure if he wants to share anything. Bobby, do you want to share? It's up to you.
Can I keep my mask on?
Yes, you sure can.
My name is Bobby Hayes. When I first joined the BAM program, I honestly thought that it was just going to be, I didn't really think it was going to benefit me. And I wasn't really ready to start expressing the way I feel, and I wasn't really ready to start building relationships with other people, because normally I like to keep to myself and avoid any sort of conflict or confrontation with anybody. But after me staying in BAM, I started noticing that those relationships were beginning to be built, and I was learning, and I just feel that the BAM program has really helped me become, or more so, take a couple new things that I can use on my journey, since I'm still growing and I'm not an adult yet. But I really do like the BAM program, and next year, or when school starts in August, I will be attending if it's still open.
Okay, great. That's amazing to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do. I did attend the BAM sessions. I attended Brookside and also attended Warriors. And I sat in the sessions until the sessions were completed. And I did listen to the curricula that was used as a format to make changes for the students. And I want to say that both of you young men were very articulate. You sound real educated. My issue that I have is some of the kids that, the reason we brought BAM here, I didn't see those kids in those meetings. I seen kids that was suicidal. I seen kids, some that was had other issues with. There was a kid was having seizures, talking about his problems. Also seen a kid that was he wasn't quite artistic, but I didn't see those kids that had the issues with insubordination, fighting, and truancy, and those type of things. And those were the kids that I went to actually really see that BAM was going to service. I'm not saying that the gentleman, you didn't eat what you got, because it sounded like to me what they offered you would help you. But and the other issue I got is you guys been here for a while, and you keep telling me you can't find nobody local from Waukegan to help you out with the process that you're trying to make. And for to save my life, I don't understand that. And you don't always have to have a master's degree, associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree to have somebody in there to have some common sense that may know the kids to be able to help achieve what you're trying to solve in reference to the reason why you're here. So that's kind of been a problem for me. I just don't understand that part, why you can't find anybody.
So if I could just speak to that really quickly, and then we have some folks from BAM who can also speak to that. That's what BAM requires, and so that was who we chose to partner with. Those were the parameters with which they do the hiring. They did make several concessions. One of those being that they would try to hire folks from Waukegan first, and then go out to Lake County, which did slow down our progress in terms of having a full staff. Making sure that we were fully staffed, rather. So, to your question, there are lots of folks that can assist. You're absolutely right, Mr. McBride. In within BAM and within the system that they've developed and the process that they utilize, these are the parameters that they set. We presented this a few years ago, explained what those were. It's not exclusionary. They're very upfront and transparent about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and why they require what they require. If there are other organizations, we're open to vetting those and looking through those. We haven't had any more proposals, and as I've mentioned in a few other reports, we did vet probably 20 to 30 organizations from the area, and what we found was that there were several organizations, if not most, did not have the capacity to serve us. So again, please feel free to add.
Well, Mrs.
Dr.
Not to excuse what you said, but what you said to me, you said last year the same thing. You repeated that over, that their perimeter is to hire people that they want to hire. My problem is, there's been nobody from Waukegan. You haven't found nobody to be able to come in your staff. That's the part I don't understand.
Mr. McBride, maybe I can help with that, right? So BAM is an organization. BAM and WOW is an organization, and because they have their brand or their name on that, they have a certain requirement of what they're looking for when they hire a counselor, I'm going to say candidate, for lack of a different terminology. So it's like Tesla. Tesla deals in electric cars. It's not going to build you a gas car. It deals in electric cars, and that's what you're going to get. BAM's requirement is that they have a degree, have other criteria. You guys can explain the criteria. So it's not that they won't hire local. Anyone local, please by all means apply. BAM is in a contract with us. They know that when people do apply, they need to look at the surrounding area first to fill those vacancies. And then if they can't find people from around the area, then they broaden their net, shall I say. But as a board, BAM is I'm going to say you're a nationally known organization who has had kudos from the Secretary of State, Secretary of Education, including the President, and they have a criteria for what a BAM counselor looks like, and that's their brand. And so if that's their brand, that's who we hired and that's who we went into contract with. And I believe that's what Dr. Cesario is trying to explain, is that they have a criteria of a specific counselor that they're looking for. And another nice thing is I just see the bonding between students and counselors, and I've seen these counselors within our area, but I'm glad that you moved into our community, and welcome to Waukegan. So I'll turn it back over to the BAM.
Now, the next question that I had, I also had the other question wasn't answered. The students that really need it, what's the problem with that?
Okay, so let me answer that one first. It's not a mandatory program, it's a voluntary program. So if the students don't want to volunteer to get in it, we can't make them get in it. And then if a student is not in school, we can't attract that student. And in a lot of cases, that's been our issue. Students haven't been coming to school. We're not truant officers. We're counselors and mentors. So if that answers that question. And
on the WOW side, I just wanted to answer your question. When we came into the school, we did work with the Dean of Climate and Control. I think that's his called, Dean of Climate and Control. And he did refer a lot of students to us. And we did take in those students. So we did work with those students. And I think that can contest to some of the data that Stephanie used, where she said that there was a decrease in referrals. We did work with a lot of students who had behavioral referrals to the dean, and he referred a lot of those young ladies to us, and we are working with them at the moment.
And to answer the second question, as the hiring manager for the Waukegan area for BAM, I wasn't getting many applications from Waukegans, from anyone in the surrounding areas, but it has improved. First, let me thank you for the recommendation you made, Mr. Woodard. He's a very good candidate, and he's in the process. So hopefully everything will work out, and he can move back home. We have a Waukegan resident that started today. He will be placed at Brookside. I have another Waukegan resident who I did a phone screening for this morning, and he's in the process of going through the interview and everything. So it has improved. Our goal is to hire from within the community. Believe I'm all for that. So it's getting better.
Just want to add one last thing. One of the things I've been with the organization for 5 years, and let me say that while this job does sound simple, it's not. And it does take a unique individual who's open to not only helping the youth and serving the youth, but also work on themselves. Because the thing is that one thing that BAM has taught me, and I've learned from BAM as a whole, is that I can't serve my youth to the best of my ability if I'm not at my best. And so what our organization does is to try to allow, at least from the BAM side, to also continue your work and your journey through manhood, because it's not over. As long as you're breathing, it's not over. And so some people, they're great candidates coming in the door, but they're closed off to some of those processes. And that's the struggle that we also serve as well. So I just wanted to share that.
Can I add something to what Mr. Scott says?
Go ahead, Ms.
Because
Gonzalez.
I also want to address some of the concerns that Mr. McBride has, and also what changed my perspective about the organization. And I really hope, for people in the audience, people watching at home, that they consider, the not only the testimonies of the students who have come today and who have come previously, talking about their experiences with their counselors, but also, the counselors themselves coming out and sharing again what this work means to them, and how they've been compelled to make Waukegan their home. We heard from one of the counselors earlier say that he felt compelled to move over here. And something that I had talked with Mr. Scott about is that, I think it's a problem, excuse me, I think it's a problem when our students or our community only feels like we can trust the person who lives down our street, right? The world is so much bigger than Waukegan, and that doesn't mean that there are not going to be people who relate to our experiences or relate to the struggles that we have gone through living here. There are a lot of people in similar situations that can come and share a lot with the students who are going through a lot and need someone to talk to about those things. So as much of a priority I want for the program to continue hiring local, and I'm glad to hear that we have new people starting that are from our community, and I'm excited for what they can bring to the program. But I'm also, just really hoping that people give these folks a chance, because they are coming from the city, they are coming from neighboring communities, and what they're sharing with the students is really helpful and does make them want to go to school, or does make them want to see, how they look at themselves and their grade or their self-image differently. So I think that's a huge part of the model and why it can work. That being said, I really like how honest, some of the counselors have been in saying, there are things that could be better. There are things that could improve. And I hear from our staff on the district side as well. There are some things that could be smoothed over or better articulated when it comes to our procedures. And I think that's what we want to see. Because there are counselors that BAM is able to bring on through their process and their own style and their own requirements, but there are also requirements that we have in the district that don't allow us to bring those people on and to have them work directly with the district. So that's just something that I wanted people to consider. That's something that I want us to work on, because as much as I want to beef up the support that BAM and WOW can have for the students, and I've seen it in sessions, how it can make them open up and make them feel more confident in sharing what they're going through. I also want us to beef up the support internally for some of the departments that have a lot of crossover with the organizations, so that there is, an interdisciplinary strength to the way that we're approaching student support.
I just want to say, I like your honesty. I said in your class, and now that I remember, you said when you came up to the podium, you made some comments that made me reflect. I was in your class, and like you said, sometimes you have to talk about yourself, and you learn also too while you're sitting in the class about yourself. Because like I said here myself, I won't always sanctimonious as I am today. Anyway, go ahead.
Greetings, board president, Mr. Ewing, superintendent, Ms. Placencia, and community members. During the past year, I've had BAM and WOW program at Jack Benny Middle School. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the board for approving these valuable programs and ask that contracts with these organizations be renewed. One of the commitments of the board has made is for equity for our students. In our community, we have very capable students who have the ability to do wonderful things in both their lives as students and in their future lives as professionals and parents. However, some of them require additional guidance in order to maximize their potential. Unfortunately, some of our students who have otherwise very bright futures simply do not have practical navigation through education and personal challenges to achieve their dreams. The connections to positive adults and other students simply are not there for many of our brightest students. That's where BAM and WOW have shown themselves to be invaluable assets to our school community. Those of us have grown up in supportive households and communities take this for granted that achievement and excellence are practice habits. They are habits that are developed and nurtured every day for extended periods of time. This is what BAM and WOW do. They teach those skills that can lead students to some potential in themselves and to see that they are just as capable of achieving their dreams as students in many affluent districts. At no other time has the district needed this program more than now. The years of COVID closures have left many students with some apprehension and doubts as are possible by adults. Unfortunately, as children, they may not have the social and emotional skills or support networks that adults may have. Many parents are left feeling desperate due to health concerns, deaths, and financial hardships. We must realize that these challenges faced by parents most certainly trickle down to the children. It is our duty as a school district to provide every possible means to ensure that our programs that are aimed at helping children navigate these challenging times. None of us learn to be men or women on our own. I would like us all to take a moment to reflect on the adults that serve as role models for us when we were children. Some of us have made mistakes when we were children or young men and women. These mistakes did not kill us. They made us stronger. The difference between a child growing up and a child taking their experiences and using them as a powerful tool is always a caring adult being there to help them up. Our students all have superpowers lying within. Please allow BAM and WOW programs to continue to teach our students how to use their superpowers for good. My name is Isaac Kirkwood. I am the principal at Jack Benny Middle School, and the BAM and WOW program is invaluable. to see the faces of our students as they go on trips, have pizza parties, even when we have difficult times. We always ask students to find a connection within the schools, and sometimes it's not Mr. Kirkwood, it's not my assistant principal, Ms. Kennedy, or Mr. McCoy, because we're viewed as disciplinarians. And it's been times when my BAM counselor or my WOW counselor has been there and was able to pull some things out of students to help them self-reflect. The program is working. I know I have a board member that comes over often to check in with me to make sure that it is working. So I know we had COVID last year. This is our first year having them in there. They are a great resource, and it's going to take time for us to see all the positive results, and change does not happen overnight. So I am a big fan of BAM and WOW, so they're working.
Mr. Kirkwood, and can I add, as a mom from a Benny student, Isaac opens his school at 7 o'clock in the morning, and those kids stay there till 7 o'clock at night. And on most nights, Isaac is there. But one of the reasons why Isaac is so successful, he gives so many different opportunities for all his students. If there's not another place to go, they have Jack Benny. And his building is always open, whether it's soccer, basketball, volleyball, tutoring. I mean, there's just always something going on, and always I see these young men and women at the front line there helping them serve. So thank you for all you do at Jack Benny too, Isaac.
It's all the teachers. It's all the teachers. And it's actually 6:30 because we got kids that come in and teachers do some tutoring. So I do want to add that. Yes.
Board President, can I ask Principal Kirkwood? I'd like to just ask you a question, because we, as board members, we hear criticism from some of the staff or some of the parents that we're paying too much money for this agency when we should be using and hiring more social workers, more counselors in our own school. Could you explain to me why you see this as important use of our money? Because some of the things I've heard is that, one, if we had more social workers, there's more consistency, they're with us all the time. For half the price of what we're paying, we could hire extra social workers who could spend more one-on-one time and group work with the kids. They would be here longer. They would know the kids from year to year. There's turnover with an outside agency. Tell me in simple terms, as a principal, why you believe an outside agency like this is the best use of our money at this time. I mean, I've heard from these kids who are telling us that, and what you said is very important to me, we all learn, to be men and women from others. We learn that, and is BAM better able to do that than our own social workers? Just explain why this is important and why we should keep it.
So as I told Darwin when I first met him, and he was bringing over BAM counsel and working with us, I think it comes from the collaboration of the principal, the dedication of the program. BAM and WOW have built relationships with our students, and Miss Kennedy and myself, we're right there hand in hand. So every week I get a report of all the kids that they're seeing. This is something that I require, and what they actually are working on. BAM and WOW is also part of, they're integral into our school. They're part of our MTSS team, as well as our SST. Student Support Service team. So they're sitting down with our counselors and our social workers and working with kids. One of the big things that I've noticed and seen is that a lot of times sometimes our social workers, and not saying that we don't need more, I don't want to say that, we can always use resources, is that sometimes they have IEP meetings, they have scheduled meetings with students, and some of the students that sometimes fall through the cracks don't always get a chance to be seen by a social worker or a psychologist. And that's where BAM and WOW picks up those kids. It's times that kids are not even on their list that they're supposed to see, that they turn in to me, and it's a kid that may be struggling. And I will go to my BAM and WOW counselor, hey, I need you guys to if one of you can sit down and talk with those students. And it's that time that they have, and the relationships that they are building, and not only with the students but with the staff as well. And I think that's really, really vital.
And Isaac, I and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's either or.
Mhm.
It's just a
Right.
supplement for both and working together. And I can say this as a mom. My son accessed the social worker at Jack Benny all the time, and the psychologist. But that doesn't mean that he won't go look for the BAM counselor also, right? And so it's about not even saving, touching as many kids as possible through all avenues. And BAM is just one component of it. And looking at social workers' numbers, I know I have my team looking at that now, right? I mean, do we need more social workers? What would that be applied? How would they be utilized? I've heard about IEP minutes. That's all areas that the team is looking at, but it doesn't have to be one or the other or adversarial. If you apply more here, then you need to take away here, or taking away the credibility from our social workers. Our social workers are very much needed, along with our school counselors and our psychologists and our teachers. The proverb there, it takes a village to raise a child, it's there for a reason. It's just not one option. And one kid may work very well with a social worker. Other people may connect. Give me your name one more time. Is it Mr. Mr. Scott knows within us. May connect with Mr. Scott and just build a rapport with him, and we'll come and speak with him. So it's just giving our students who need it, and we know we need it. We can see what's happening in our community. We see that there's a lot of trauma coming out of the pandemic. It's just giving them another option. And that's what this is about, another option to service their needs and touch them individually.
Superintendent, I think you've said it really well. And Mr. Kirkwood, Principal Kirkwood too, and the young men that spoke as well said some things that were very important. One of them is, I'm learning things that's going to help me on my journey. Life is a journey. We're all learning things. The other young man talked about relationships. These are things we don't regularly teach in school, whether a social worker, counselor, whatever. So it's a complement to what we're doing in school, and these are very important life lessons. So I think I support what you're doing, and certainly thank you for being here and telling us why you support this. Thank you, sir.
And I have some comments and some questions, and I'm sure the audience may also. But I do see that we're not at the end of our slides. Is that correct, Deputy Cesario?
Yes, we have a few more.
So.
But I think the rest goes into AHS.
Okay.
So if we're on BAM WOW, I'd rather field those questions right now.
I see two in the audience.
Can you give him a mic?
We're all good people trying to do
Is it on?
good work. Am I good now?
There you go.
Okay. There are a couple of things I'd like some clarification on, though. So, in your literature, in your proposals, BAM represents itself as a Tier 2 intervention, and BAM and WOW as a Tier 2 intervention, and also that you would have data to prove the effectiveness of your program through bag information. So I don't know if that is going to be presented to the board, if you have that information that would actually give us pre-intervention data and then post-intervention data.
So we don't have the grades just yet, only because our records day's next Wednesday. So grades, that's part of the bag report that just won't be published yet because grades aren't finalized. But as far as attendance and referrals, that data is in the presentation where it just shows you how many kids in each site have decreased their referrals and ODRs for this quarter, and or their attendance has improved. I have percentages if you want that, like per building. I have that also.
Okay, that would be
yes.
We have, so we've also been presenting on this quarterly. So that was part of the requirements that the board had set, is that we share this information quarterly with them. So throughout the year, it would have been presented. So just like Stephanie said, we don't have that yet because it's not finalized yet, but we have been, that was one of the first things that the board had required, was this quarterly reporting.
So is this quarterly reporting reflecting the efficacy of the intervention? Is it working?
So for that, it's a building, specifically at each building, that data points we talked about at their MTSS team. So I'm giving you kind of district level at what I see, but your building team, the team that the counselors sit on, should also be talking about that data in a smaller setting.
I'm just thinking in terms of you're wanting a renewal of this based on this criteria. So I would think that you would be presenting that criteria to the board, especially for renewal. The other thing would be, as I understand Tier 2 interventions, a Tier 2 intervention would, so like your referral process, you guys were saying very openly that you're taking referrals from anywhere, right? But Tier 2 kids that would require a Tier 2 intervention, there would be a criteria for that. And then if they met that, so there's a difference between doing Tier 2 interventions and working with Tier 2 kids. So if you're saying you're working with Tier 2 kids because you're taking referrals from anywhere, as opposed to you are getting Tier 2 referrals from your school. And I'm sure that's not happening at Brookside.
That I think it's both. So I think students are being referred based on, like Wow had said, the climate and culture specialist. So whether students are going to the climate and culture specialist because of behavior or because of anything that has happened throughout their day, that's a referral that has coming from a climate and culture specialist, and or the students are referring themselves. But remember, Tier 1 is your universal, so everyone is getting access to Tier 1. So if a student is referring themselves and or a staff member is referring a student to BAM and WOW, there is a reason. There's something is not, the teacher or the staff member is seeing something at Tier 1 that is just maybe not jiving, or the student needs extra support. So it's a little bit of both. But again, if Tier 1 is universal for everybody. So students can be referred from anybody, from a staff member, climate and culture specialist, or from the MTSS team to receive BAM and WOW. But it is a recommendation because it is not a mandatory program.
Yes, well, and neither are any of the other interventions, right? I just want for clarity, because it is being represented that there are certain data that is supporting the outcomes, and I'm not seeing that, and that that they are Tier 2 interventions. As I understand the Tier 2 intervention, that's going to be skills-based and time-limited. As I understand BAM and WOW, and this is not a knock on the program, I think it's a strength of the program. But as I understand BAM and WOW, you can have a kid and they're going to be in it and with it for a couple of years, right? That is not a Tier 2 intervention. So I just want to be clear on what is being presented here. So it's being presented as a Tier 2, and it's being presented as integrated into MTSS. I can't speak for the other schools. I know at Brookside it is not integrated, and frankly, we don't have a functioning MTS. There's no way that, and this comes to the staffing issue, there's no way we can meet our Tier 2 obligations to students, just in terms, if you look at 2,500 students and you look at 3.5 social workers, right?
Yeah, and I think you raised some valid points, and I think just your last statement right there is that there is an overwhelming need to support students. I think that's part of what our efforts are here, is to provide options and opportunities, not to supplant the services that the school-based social workers, psychologists, counselors are doing, but to supplement. This is in no way meant to be a long-term solution here. Ideally, what we'd like to see is students weave in and out of this and have the need that they do. But we know that some students are going to need longer-term mentoring for whatever reason. Young women, young men who who may not have that mentoring presence in their life. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do. It was never intended to impact a large number of students. We were very transparent in the fact in saying that this is really going to impact a smaller group of students. And as Mr. McBride said, that was who we were targeting. Those students who were most in need, right? Who were most at risk. But again, it's voluntary. And students have to be in school and they have to want to come and be a part of it. But having that option there, we talk about the price tag and how much it costs. We can't put a value on a student's life. If we can make an impact, we have two young men here tonight. If we've made an impact on their lives, how can we put a price tag on it? So I understand that there's things that need to be developed and worked on. And one thing I will say is that I don't know if it's been, and it's the community's job to scrutinize both internal stakeholders and external stakeholders to ask questions. But have we really had an opportunity to implement this fully and to really support it? We're still working through things, and I think Isaac really did a really great job of saying we need to give this a fair shot, right? But again, I think that this was specifically, this resource here, again, was to supplement, not to supplant, because we know that there's a great need.
Mr. Sir, let me cut you off. I didn't just do a great job. I was the board member that he's talking about was constantly over there.
Oh, I know.
Other questions?
I have one thing I would like to do to wrap up. Okay.
It's when a principal comes to the board member in the building that's dealing with your kids every day and see those kids that's constantly coming to his office with all kind of issues. And when I come over there, he's telling me that some of these kids that have been coming, they don't come no more, all because of the fact that BAM has instilled some kind of information in them to slow them down. And that's data for me.
That's
and
right.
I'm hoping that the rest of the building is getting the same information that I just received from the principal at Jack Benny. So that's data for me.
Right, that's qualitative data. You're absolutely right. It is. It's data in another form. But I think I think it's a very valid point that you made, and I think we do need to improve on that to ensure that what is being said is going to be an outcome will be part of an outcome. I think you're absolutely right. I'm not discounting that by any means, but I do think it's only important that, and as you know, if we're going to implement something, we need to really implement it fully. And we need to work through some of these aspects that aren't fully worked through. We haven't had a full staff load, and part of that was because they were the organization with full integrity of honoring the contract and honoring the wishes of the board, was really trying to find folks from Waukegan. They were trying to do this during the pandemic too.
Sure.
So it was really difficult. It's not an excuse, it's not a justification, but I think it is a work in progress, and I do agree that we have to look at the qualitative data too. We have to look at it from all pieces, right? But we have to be accountable, and we have to hold the folks accountable to what they said they're going to do and what they've put out in their publications. You're absolutely right.
And I'd just like to, one of the things I heard that was very encouraging is this is not an or situation that we're in, but this is an and situation that we're in. And we are all in this together. So that's very encouraging to me. And it's encouraging for me to hear that we're not being supplanted here. It is a more difficult and more courageous position to build capacity in district. And BAM, for however wonderful it's going to be, will not build capacity because, as it's been said, it's here to help. But if we do not have the current capacity in our building so that we can responsibly respond to the Tier 2 and Tier 3 problems, BAM's not going to fix that.
I think we all agree.
Okay. All right.
And I just want to address one point that the superintendent touched on earlier, too, is that since we started this conversation and since that was brought up a few years ago, I believe it was 2019, 2020, but we've brought on, I think we've brought on six social
I wanted to just put into the conversation for us. We have a evaluation plan that gets at our outcome data, and that involves a pre and a post test. For BAM, it's the holistic student assessment, thank you. And for WOW, it's a series of social emotional assessments that we do pre and post. Those just aren't ready yet. We're in the process of doing both of those, the post parts of those, and then those come together and we analyze those, and we do provide those at the school level as well as at the district level that we'd be happy to share at the end of June, beginning of July, where it'll show what was the impact. And it's taking all of that data together because we don't provide student level. We provide that to the students only, but the district-wide, school-wide, we would be able to share what that impact was on the outcome data that is important to the programs that show the work that we're doing with those individual students, and to help support why we're doing our part, to show that we're doing our part, because we know that we can talk, but sometimes data is also helpful, because you need both to be able to talk about why a program like BAM and WOW are needed. So I just wanted to add that. We have an evaluation team that is working diligently. I know earlier today we found out how many we've gotten in so far. The counselors are working with the young people to understand the assessment process so that they're being given their honest feedback. So it is important, just as important to us, not just to prove the value of the program, but to really show young people at that very basic level that how they're improving. Because when they start to see that success, that adds to their ability to believe in themselves, to want to do better, to want to reach out, to make a different decision when the opportunity comes up. So I just wanted to add that part of how important evaluation is to us as a program at the program level, but also at the student level, and how we integrate it as part of just the work that we do with young people.
And I'm going to ask for everybody to use the microphones. I'm just getting tons of things about people not being able to hear online. So thank you. That's just a housekeeping thing. And I saw Mr. Shinkton. I don't know, are you done, Mr. Dalton? Mr. Shinkton.
So one of my, I had a few questions also. I did see in the breakdown of the costs that roughly half of the contract is for salaries, and then there's a breakdown of the rest of the costs. Just wondering, for the social workers or counselors that are here, does our full-time staff get the type of resources? I've never heard of a counselor or social worker here being able to, say, throw a pizza party or, take kids on their own field trips. So, and to another question, we're looking at hiring, having 18 staff members, roughly working with 1,000 kids. That basically comes to 50 kids per
right, it's about
caseload.
Yes, 55 per counselor.
Even if you just take, say, a high school teacher, there's 9 periods. They probably teach for 6. They're probably dealing with 200, 250 kids on a daily basis. Of course you're going to be able to show some results when your numbers are so much smaller and you can give people the time that they need.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Shinkton.
So I think that for BAM and WOW, they're really focusing on the students and their well-being and making sure that they are creating very fantastic human beings. Like the 2 kids that grew up here. They are learning on their journey and they're gaining life lessons. While I was a teacher, super important. But I love the fact that BAM and WOW is focusing on the students and focusing on their journey and how they are going to grow after high school. I think that some of the costs that are reflected in the presentation are for curriculum, for laptops. They are, we provide district employees with laptops, with curriculum, with resources. I think as far as the pizza party and college trips, that becomes a school budget where the schools can write into their budget that they would like to take their kids on a field trip to a college campus. That's very well possible. So I think that there's things that we have budgeted for BAM and WOW to do those things too. That's part of their curriculum, and that can very well, every school can do that also.
Thank you. Ms. Vukovic, I saw your hand next.
Oh.
You, no question. Ms. Viagra?
Hi, you said that you provide the students with laptops?
The BAM and WOW counselors.
The BAM and WOW provide the students with laptops?
No.
The district provides you guys with the laptop?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because my son goes to an outplacement school who does not have a laptop and whom has been out of school now for 10 days due to COVID, which he was not infected. And I have been reaching out, Dr. Bublitz, the special education department, Mr. Dennis Adams, in which my son, Sir Ian, still does not have that device so that he can do remote learning because now he is out of school. So it's funny to me that we talk about everyone has Chromebooks and we got all these things going on in the district and we have $65 million, but yet Dennis Adams has to reach out to Outreach to have somebody drive 52 miles to another town to get a device, and here in Lincoln Center, he couldn't walk down the hall or to another building to provide a device so that my son can not miss 10 days of school. He's already missed a lot of school because you have failed him on his IEP and placed him at a grade level that he was not at. So I don't have 10 days, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days to waste because he doesn't have a device that nobody in the district can provide for him. So if there is a crisis in the district, in the community, Outreach now has to let go of one of their people to go all the way to Lombard to get a device for one child here. My community, I am a taxpayer, and it is not correct. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Thank you for finally responding to one email, Mr. Ewing, but have we made any progress as into when Sir Ian will have a device? Maybe Mr. Bublitz or someone can answer that? Because this is where we do that, right back and forth. This isn't the...
It was a question about the comment. When you emailed me, again, anytime I've received the email, I've ensured that somebody addresses the concern. I got it today. I responded today. I promised that I was coming to Lincoln Center and I would reach out to you today. And so that is happening. I can't from this podium because I've been in a meeting since 5:30, state what time, but I promise you the individuals in this room will make sure Sir Ian has a laptop.
Because I promise you I would be here tonight to demand questions, answers to my questions, so thank you.
You didn't get that laptop the other day I was here at Lincoln Center?
No, I had to come to Lincoln Center to remind Mr. Adams, hey, did you check your email? Friday, hey, my son is displaced. We're going to need a device. That was yesterday, correct?
Right.
Right, because I am that parent. I'm going to always do my part. I need the district to do their part. Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Viagra. I'm going to ask Dr. Caesar to step out and address that concern.
Thank you. So with that, I had just a couple comments and then 2 questions. I did get, you guys are actively hiring, but I'll ask explicitly, when do you expect to have your positions filled?
Whomever, do you want to step up?
I currently have 2 open positions. I actually have 4 positions that are filled. I have someone that I placed at Lewis last week and someone we're going tomorrow to Juarez. I'm super excited about this. But we'll be putting her tomorrow into school, and then I have 2 more open positions. I have 1 candidate in the loop. Can't I mean, it's just been rough. I mean, we know that it's nationwide. It's not just, youth guidance or, walking in public school. It's what the job market is throwing at us, but it's getting better. So I do see improvement. I do see things changing. I do see a lot more candidates coming in. And we are reaching out to the Lake County, and, I've been sending out, sorry, my phone is just, I've been reaching out I reached out to the University Center at, I want to say it right, CLC, and I send them our hiring ad. They were going to send it to students. I'm hoping we can get 1 or 2, but I only have 2 more positions as of now to be filled.
Thank you. And then the question that came through was related to, and it's just for clarity, I think we already answered it, but do you also see Tier 3 students?
Yes, we do. We don't turn any student down. It's not a mandatory program. If we can attract Tier 3 students, they're more than welcome to come aboard.
Okay. Now, my kind of comments, and I don't know, first off, I do appreciate what the superintendent said, and which is my position, is many times, and because we are in a district which has limited resources, and that has been the way we've operated, we make the choices binary, is that it has to be either or. What I'm hearing, and I want to kind of get to the core of it, and then I have some brief remarks from students, which is what kind of helped focus me in my decision-making process, is as someone who ran a male mentorship program, as someone who saw the benefit of male mentorship, I know what those programs did for me, and I know what they did for my students. Did not have a master's, to Mr. McBride's point. But to go to what Mr. Shington said, is we have just between, and this is rough math, the middle and high school, 6,500 students. BAM and WOW are representing about 1,000 of those 6,500 students. What I hear Mr. McBride is saying is we have a community that wants to also be included and involved, and if it's not in the BAM program, how are we utilizing and working with the community to address the other 4,500 students? So that's one thing, is I don't want to negate what Mr. McBride is saying. I agree. One of the reasons why I supported BAM is because when they came in and they said, well, you want to do just a 1-year contract, we can't come to Waukegan if that's the only investment that you're moving. It doesn't work. I respect organizations that are saying, hey, this is our model. We know that it works, and we're going to hold to that model. Doesn't mean we're not going to provide you the data. Doesn't mean we're not going to collaborate and connect with you. But it does mean that we're not going to change from what we believe and knows works for students. The other argument that I'm hearing is that we have to build our internal capacity. We have individuals that want to solve this problem, that want to address this, that are doing this because they love our students, and they feel like the messaging has been they're not doing something, or they should be doing more. And even the ones that want to do more feel like they can't do more is because they are not constantly, because they have to meet the requirements of IEP minutes, for example. They have to make sure that they're servicing those students. So even if they want to lead groups, even if they want to see other students, they don't have the capacity to do those type of things. And so how do we make sure that those individuals feel supported? And again, I don't think they're binary. I think we can bring in BAM and WOW, and I think we can examine our internal processes. And I think we have to get, where I always hear is, like when we're talking about BAM, which students do they see? They see the students that we refer. And so if there's an issue with BAM and WOW and the students that are being referred, it's not a BAM and WOW conversation, that's a school leadership conversation, right? And that's where I think we are talking about, is how are we supporting our students. And so Mr. White, if you would pull up just the survey. So Ms. Gonzalez and I, and if you go to the responses tab, all the way at the top, not all the way, but you see questions, responses. There we go. Our students in civics and government are amazing. And so they did projects where they looked at issues impacting their local community and their schools, and they're actually working on these projects. And so we had a student, a junior, who reached out to us It's because her concern is mental health and how Waukegan Public Schools is doing at addressing the mental health issues and needs of its students. And so this is a small survey and sampling, but I did promise her, and I'm making a point, I'm sorry, but have you felt prolonged or intensified feelings of sadness within the last 6 months? 73% of the respondents said yes. Have you ever lost interest in classes or activities that you would normally enjoy? 86.5% of respondents say yes. Do you feel there is enough being done to address the issues and bring awareness, and that's related to mental health? 73% of respondents said no. On a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable do you feel talking to a school counselor, and then they do, and or social worker? Out of the respondents, the 1 represents not at all, and 5 represents all the time. So it's only 100, it's a small sampling size, 126, but 46 of those 126 said that they wouldn't feel comfortable. And we have to unpack why that is those people are there because they're there to support them and love them, but the students don't feel like that's an available resource to them. And then this one was student mental health isn't talked about enough in our school. Do you agree with that statement, or do you not? And then finally, what is the best way that schools can help students cope with depression? And they talked about things from ranging from looking at how much assignments, how much works they're given, being able to talk about it, teaching skills and coping. And then the kicker is, are you aware of the current resources for emotional and mental support at Waukegan High School? Most of our students said no. And then do you feel that the schools provide enough resources to help students cope? And no, and then they gave a plethora of ideas. And I share this data because it's 126, and I actually want to work with the students to see if we can get this on a much larger scale, right, our student body. But how are our students feeling since the pandemic? And so what I don't want the community, or for BAM and WOW, or for our social workers, or our counselors, or our teachers to feel is that it's one or the other. We are in a crisis. And what I hear from social workers in the audience, what I hear from counselors is they want us all working together. And sometimes it feels like we are in different camps and that people are fighting against it. And so what I'm asking is, we do have data. BAM and WOW have been presented it. They've had struggles related to staffing. We've had struggles related to staffing. How are we going to address those? And then how are we going to work with each other as the adults to address the needs of our students who are in crisis? And so as we go through the budget, I believe we have to address the needs of the internal capacity building. I think the board has said it. I think people want it. I don't think there'll be anybody who will say we wasted resources because we hired additional social workers in District 60 or counselors. So I want us to look at that seriously, because there are things that we want to implement, that I want to implement, like the Handle with Care program that we talked about, that we can't do because our staff is already overburdened. So the only way we can add those programs is if we take some things off of their plate and have them share the load. And then the final thing is related to the RFQ, RFP process, is that was a goal. We have the criteria, we have what we're looking for. We have to be aggressive with that RFP, RFQs, because what you have is a community that is saying we want to help be a part of the solution. And based on our own numbers, this program doing the great work with 1,000 kids, Brookside alone, if you say 2 counselors, 110 kids, what are you doing for the other 2,000? Where can the other 2,000 go? And that's the conversation I want us to move to. So I don't want to go BAM good, BAM bad, WOW good, WOW bad, social workers, counselors. How are we going to work together to solve the needs of our students? And what I hear from our social workers is they have to be at the table, is because they want to be a part of the solution. They have ideas, they want to do the work, but they want to make sure that they understand how it all fits together and how we're serving kids. And so I said a lot, but what happened in that conversation, and I'll close with this, is she was sharing the interaction that our student had during COVID. She was overwhelmed. She was working from home. She started to cry on video cam. And the response that she got was to snap out of it. And again, what was the intention behind that? I wonder, what can you do, right? How are we giving the skills, not just to BAM, not just to WOW, not just to our social workers, not to just to our counselors, but how are we building the mental health awareness and capacity of all the individuals that service our students in District 60? And so I said all of that to say is we heard how our students internalize these conversations, how they internalize these interactions. We heard it last week. I heard it and witnessed it today on that phone call, and it's impacting them. So we need a holistic approach to how we address mental health in District 60. And we have to do that together, and we can't be disjointed and feel like we are at each other's throats about it. And I'm not saying anybody is doing that here, but I hear the tension that exists in the buildings between different departments and services. So I say all that to say is I appreciate BAM and WOW and what you do and what you have done for our students. I appreciate where you are going. You have provided data points, and we have those as attachments outside of just this agenda. There was a one-pager that was attached to the agenda item last week, which had a little bit more data. They've given out responses to some of the questions that have come, so if there are more specific questions, we're not taking action on this tonight. Hopefully it'll be on the agenda next Tuesday, and we'll be voting either to, yes or no. The board will vote to approve or deny. But again, I see what's happening, but I want us to kind of say, all right, the goal is to service our kids and to service all of them. And this is just a small part of what we are doing. So I thank the Board of Education. I thank the presenters. Ms. Leguizamo, do you have any final thoughts? And then we're going to move on to AHS.
I mean, and just rounding out the conversation, right? If we're needing consensus from the board in regards to the increase of our internal capacity, Superintendent, I don't know if you're looking for that direction, or if you just have any questions from us in regards to our messaging around this.
Nope. I think I've stated that we're assessing what is our internal capacity, is there a need, what is the need, etc. ASAP is looking at that now. We'll come back and report later.
Okay.
I hear you.
I want to make a comment.
Just to add on to that as well, right? It has to happen quickly, because this is, and think about it, right? It was 3 years ago, give or take, that someone came to us and asked the board members if do they feel that our school district is at a crisis, and we all sat here and said yes, right? And so we're still, we've talked about this. We've sent people out on conferences, and this, this isn't really to BAM and WOW, but this is just the whole district-wide initiative in regards to the mental health of our students and where that goes, right? So I think we put in a lot of investment. I think we're ready to start hitting the button to let's go.
Yeah, but I also want to state, it's not like we haven't hit the button, and I have to say that for ASAP, because they have brought together, it's not just extra social workers. And Dr. Cesario just explained that they have added social workers. But it's a multi-layer approach. I also know that ASAP has presented on the multi-layer approach, right? Extended tutoring, extended year, BAM, WOW. So I'll turn it over to you, but we'd be really remiss to say that our team has not taken any action here.
I do want to mention that because I know you referenced pushing the buttons, and so this was laid out 3 years ago. Everything that was laid out 3 years ago is part of a process of scaling up and providing services systematically, intentionally, and strategically, using data to support that, inclusively. Now, is there a need to really work towards collaboration and making sure that we're all on the same page? Indeed, there is. However, there is something that was mentioned about ensuring that our teachers have the ability to have those tools that are needed. 6 months ago, MTSS presented on mental health toolkits to the board to talk just about that. The cost was presented, all those things were laid out as part of a strategy that was just discussed here. So I just want to, again, I think it's really important that we have to advocate for the folks who are working on ASAP with the team members, with the coordinators, with the directors, because this isn't just something that we're not doing. we have been intentional. We've been strategic. We've used the data. We need the support, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it does take everyone. It takes everyone to support these issues, and it doesn't happen overnight. And that's just like I had mentioned earlier, that it's going to take a while, and we have to do this with it's got to be done with fidelity, and it's got to be done in all fairness, allowing it to work. It will not work in 6 months or a year. It takes time for it to work. You had mentioned that on a previous conversation. It doesn't happen in a year.
Yep.
It takes a few years for this to work. And in terms of, this was never meant to address 6,000 kids.
Right.
Very transparent in that. And I said, when I started, I said AHS is going to work for about 2,000 to 3,000, and I said that the group BAM WOW would probably work for about 1,000. And then that's why the mental health toolkits was also brought up, that it takes everyone working as a village to really address this issue. Everyone working in tandem. This is not to supplant, it's to supplement, because we're all social workers, we're all psychologists, and I don't mean that in the sense that we have the certificate and everything else, but teachers, administrators, we're all doing that. We could use some of those skills. And so this is part of it. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the hard work of the folks that are up here doing this day in and day out, meeting with AHS, meeting with BAM and WOW, coordinating that, because it just doesn't happen on these evenings. It just doesn't happen when we answer questions from the community. It happens day in, day out, morning, noon, and night, on weekends, throughout the summer, into winter break. I think it's very important to note that, and so thank you.
I also think that it has to be strategic, right? And so the plan that ASAP has laid out is like an onion. There's many layers to it, right? And so we are coming out of a pandemic, and we know that our country is hurting more now than ever. And just, I'm going to even say in our community, hearing gunshots where I never even heard gunshots on a regular basis now. And so it's not just a school issue, it's not just a community issue, it's a national issue, right? But we can sit here and say, okay, well, let's sound the alarm. We're going to go get 20 more social workers. We're still going to have the problems if it's not strategic, if we're not supplying the support, if there's no plan, if we're not checking fidelity, and we're going to even have more fractions if people feel they only own part of the work. This is my building. It doesn't pertain to anybody else. This is how we do it. It doesn't work that way. As a district, the board's job is to ensure that the system can support what we're launching, and that it's strategic, that we can monitor it with fidelity, and that we're seeing growth. Are our kids hurting? They are hurting. Is our community hurting? Yes, it's hurting. Is there a plan? Yes, there is. So I don't want to take away that ASAP has not been intentional in their plans and authentic in their plans. Now, could there be more meat added to the plan? Maybe now, is there another iteration now that we're coming out of the pandemic and we're saying, hey, listen, we went this year, none of us have ever been through a pandemic. So we're coming out of this and we're saying, listen, we thought maybe it was going to be this much trauma. What we're seeing is compounded, and so we may need to add this or that. So that's what I'm asking the ASAP team to go back and assess the plan that has been put in place for this year, and to see, are there any gaps where we need to add more. And I believe what ASAP should be hearing is that you have the support of the board for what you need, and they'll get it to you. And that's what the board is saying, not taking away from the work that's been done.
And agreed. And my final comment, and then I had hands in the audience, one that I didn't see, Miss Fulton, and then I can't see with the mask. Okay, so I'll go there next. But is, again, I think a lot of people are working hard. I think everybody is working hard. And what I keep going in, and I've said it before, is with our hard work, how is it landing and impacting the students? It's because student voice and what it is that they're experiencing is what I think we need to put at the center of this conversation. But Ms. Fulton?
I just want to say that I think we all...
Do we have a microphone?
She has one.
It's not on?
I don't... Okay, it is on now. I think what happens is we have to start having real honest conversations, right? and being upfront and giving what everybody needs, right? I kind of tripped up on Juliet and Terica. That's her name? Terica. And Terica was like, well, why haven't we been introduced to you? You have all these resources and everything in your head, and we haven't even been introduced to you. Everybody wants to help, and nobody is putting everybody at the table to help. There's no communication happening, and we really want to help. If I come and bring every student that I have touched in this district, and I'm not from Waukegan, right? I would probably have a whole football field, right? But we don't say that. Everybody has touched kids, and every kid has a story about each social worker they have sat down with. Each counselor they have sat down with, each person. So I know, because I'm a true student advocate, right? Also, as a non-community member, but as a community member, I want to say something, touch up on what Ms. Gonzalez said. Yes, I don't think the community is saying that. Yes, students need to go out and learn about different people in the community, but before I came here, I was a community activist in my hometown and a community organizer. So when I came here, I knew what it truly meant to be in the community and being seen in the community, even if I didn't live in the community. And I think that's what you say. So if I'm in Chicago, I want to know what the backwoods are, right? I'm not from Chicago, but I got enough friends in there that know I need to know where the backwoods are. I know we need to know West Garfield is the the most crime filled area in Chicago. But people need to know that working with our kids, if you go to the south side on 14th Street, that's LK territory. If you go over here to Williamsburg, that's MD territory. They need to know this in order to help kids. And so I'm just saying that you need to put people in front of these people in order, even if they don't have a master's in counseling degree. Everybody doesn't know I have a master's in counseling and I'm a certified counselor, but I am. But, I know truly that sometimes I need somebody that don't have that degree to help these kids, and we need to just help each other. Yes, I'm reiterating some of the things that Brenda was saying, but I hope you guys truly listen, that there is people in here. We need to really build capacity, really, really take us seriously. We want to help, and I think we will. We have that drive to help. In the district, I love this district. I love this community, but you got to put us in front of the people also. That's all I want to say.
Exactly, Ms. Fulton, and I thank you for that. And as the coordinator of counselors, that is your role, right, to build the capacity of your counselors. I get the social worker will build the capacity of their social workers, but everybody has a role as long as Stephanie builds the roles of MTSS, her coordinators. What I'm hearing from Ms. Fulton is that the coordinators and the directors at some point need to come and talk, because that's your role. Your role is to build the capacity of your counselors. That's your job. That's your job description. And how that rolls underneath you, that's your leadership, right? But are you talking to the social worker who's talking to the MTSS, who's talking to all the academic people at ASAP? And that may be, Eduardo, the takeaway is how are we bringing them together to have those conversations.
Ms. Rona?
Okay, is it on? I'm sorry, I have laryngitis, but I'm not contagious. I tested 4 times, I'm okay. But I just wanted to touch on a few different points. One of them, Ms. Placencia, that you were just talking about, everybody working together and talking together. This is my 20th year in the district. And it's sad to say, I'm at the high school. I'm the lead social worker, but I'm also at the high school part-time at Washington campus. And year after year, we try to build our systems, but they continue to be broken. I found out, middle of the year maybe, that Washington campus has a BAM counselor. None of the social workers have met the BAM counselor. We don't have MTSS meetings. We don't do any of that. we are working very much like an island on our own. You guys all know, our counselors, and Ms. Fulton knows this too, our counselors say that they don't provide SEL and mental health. So you're down to 2.5 social workers are the only boots on the ground at Washington campus, which I'm not surprised as to why the survey looks the way the survey does, where they don't know where to go when there's only 2.5 of us that are providing that support. So I'm all for like more boots on the ground, BAM, WOW, AHS. I know I emailed all the board members. I do have some concerns. One of them being the price, the $2.5 million for all three. If I did the rough math, I'm not a mathematician, just a social worker, did the math, that could come out to 41 additional people, right? That could be boots on the ground. That could be 2 more social workers, counselors, right? I'm a social worker, but I'm not just all about the social workers. Anybody who can provide support for our students to come in. So when I look at that, I just see that it doesn't just weigh right, where we can get more people in, a lot more people in, twice the number for the same amount of money. But I'm all for everybody coming in and supporting, just maybe looking a little different. I did just want to make one more plug about building the capacity. When we look at building either social workers or counselors or whatever, I know that Ms. Dotson, she wanted to be here today, but she can't. I know that she has asked for the last couple years to allow us to hire master level. All social workers in the schools have to have masters plus their Pell. But to hire master level social workers or counselors or psychs or whatever without the Pell, because we do have trouble finding the Pell. In all honesty, it is because of the salary. So we do have some trouble attracting the social workers with the Pels. But I know, and I put it in the email to you guys, we would be able to fill positions of master level social workers without a Pell. I mean, just think of people who work in private practice or community mental health. People in community mental health have very long hours, very high caseloads, and not a really great salary. So coming to a school is a bump for them. A lot of people might want to work in a school because it's much better for their hours with their own children and stuff. So just to think outside the box, I know other districts do that as well. They have some social workers that work with IEP students because they have the Pell, but we know we have a lot of trauma, we have a lot of other things that non-Pell social workers or counselors can support and can do. So I just want, when you guys talk about the budget and looking at that kind of stuff, to weigh that also, to hire master level clinicians that don't have the Pell, because there is plenty of work that they can do in the district as well.
Yeah, I thank you for your comments. And my ask, Deputy Cesario, is that you bring the coordinator of social work, the coordinator of counseling, and the coordinator of MTSS together, Jen. And I want to discuss on how that communication is flowing, how are they coming together to discuss the resources, because it seems that they all are very similar in the camp and the services that they provide. And how are we supporting one another in the work, and what more supports need to be added? So when you're assessing this, can you please bring those 3 coordinators together to discuss how we move forward? Also ensuring how that is now rolling out from them to their staff, right, to the social workers, to the counselors, to our MTSS coaches. And Stephanie, I do want you to look into why are those teams not established. It sounds to me, I'm not saying they're not, but are they established? Let me ask the question right. Are they established at the high school? And if they're not, when they will be established, how that information is being communicated to the people that work at both high schools and AOEC. I do not want to leave AOEC out, so that it's inclusive of all staff.
AOEC actually has a very high functioning MTSS team.
Okay.
Brookside does. I just don't think it's not as high functioning as AOEC does, and I think Washington is just, next year it'll be up and running.
But we're hearing our social workers having some concern, and they're saying they're not getting the information, right? So we can say that it's there, but let's go look, right? And let's bring our coordinators together, because we own the work. We can't just bypass the work or say we don't own the work at some point. Let's bring them all together. How are we sharing resources? How are we supporting the staff that we are developing to ensure that their success in MTSS, social work, and counseling? And how is BAM part of that process too, right? So those layers that we laid, Asian Human Services, how is it all flowing?
And the last, just point of clarity and then reflection, is we all do SEL.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, President Ewan.
What I say, we all are supposed to be doing SEL, and that's why I keep escalating the voices of our students, is because this is knowledge that we as adults know. This is stuff we've been talking about, Deputy Cesario. This is stuff that we've invested in. So that's the disconnect when I say I have a view from the mountaintop, is I see the resources that we spend. I see the money that we send. I see the PD that we send people to. So when I say everybody does SEL, that's the expectation. It may not be the reality that we're experiencing on the ground, but I'm saying it to the camera. I'm saying it to this board. I'm saying that is my expectation. We all do SEL. It's because our students deserve it. They need it. And we know that's going on. And then the final one, and Ms. Gonzalez, I'm sorry to speak for you, but it goes back to staffing. As we talked about building capacity, and Ms. Fulton, we created and approved a coordinator of counselors, the counseling coordinator position. That position is still vacant. And so part of what I think the disconnect is we have to fill that position. So where Ms. Fulton is definitely a coordinator and responsible for our post-secondary work, we have to do an intentional focus. So it's not just on Ms. Fulton to build capacity, or Ms. Dodson or whoever. Let's, just like we talked about with Bam and Wow, we have to make sure that we are filling our own internal positions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll second what President Ewing has mentioned. I've talked with Deputy Cesario several times. I'm not there physically, guys. I wish I could be there, because I think this is a really important conversation. But I just want to affirm the work that ASAP is doing, and what Dr. Cesario has been looking to bring into the district, because that is needed. We need those supports, but when we emphasize building our internal capacity, it's also about, again, like Ms. Fulton said, like Mr. Ronan said, it's about seeing where the gaps are for the people who are already with us and where they need more support. It doesn't mean don't be unintentional and kind of just hire everyone to come join the district all at once. I think it is really important for your team to give us the recommendation, go back and see where we can, make those small additions. But I think that this is what it means to bring everyone, to honestly have their piece of this redesign vision for the school. I think this is how it happens. I want us to find a really strong principal. I want you guys to feel like your work is going to have, loads of impact to the students, because it already is impacting students. But I think all of us want to feel like they have a little bit of stake in it, and their suggestions are being considered. And I know you guys are doing that. But I think the students need to see that, and it needs to be more visible in order for it to, be a knockout. So I really hope that this is like a constructive conversation, us giving feedback and us highlighting, that students feel this way, because we know that you all are working hard. It's just a matter of, if it's a policy that we need to update, like President Ewing was mentioning, if we need to make SEL something concrete, if we need to put out a statement or something, I want everyone to be on the same page about what we're doing, because I want the legacy of this administration to be exactly that, and I think everyone in the school wants to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And one last point to make here is that that's exactly it, is that there's a structure that has to go with this. And I think that's part of what we're hearing, is that there's a lack of articulation, especially at the high school. Hence the reason for bringing everybody together. I opened with the chairs and why we're doing that. And part of that is because there is a lack of articulation. There is a lack of support. We've identified that as an area of needed growth. Therefore, we brought folks together to create this transformation plan, which will be presented to folks, to the community. But yeah, that's exactly what it is the need to be, there has to be a structure to help facilitate that. And that's what we're going to put in place. It doesn't mean that it's going to alleviate or fix all those areas, but it is to create more lines of communication so that we're not duplicating services, so that we can eliminate redundancies and we can be more efficient with the resources that we have, both human and physical. So I totally agree with what everything's been said, but I just wanted to clarify in my previous statement that it is part of a strategy, and it has been an ongoing strategy along with the curriculum work that's been happening. They go hand in hand, SEL with curriculum work, with everything else that we've been doing. So we'll look forward to showcasing that in the next, I believe the next meeting, is that right? Yeah. So we do have AHS, so with your permission, Board President, we'd like to really present that because we have some folks here who need to leave at some point this evening.
Could I just make a quick comment? I know we have people listening from the outside, and I was just reading an article today about school boards and school meetings and how they throw around these acronyms all the time, and the public, parents don't often understand what they're saying. And I wonder if maybe when we throw these terms around, we could just explain to people. For instance, in the last minute or two, we talked about ASAP, BAM, WOW, AHS, and SEL. And if somebody's watching from the outside and isn't familiar with that, and we're going constantly, and those are important terms, and they said just put it in common language, like
Sure.
SEL is life skills training. A parent listening all of a sudden says
Social emotional learning. So SEL is social emotional learning.
Social emotional
Yeah.
learning, or in other words, a sort of a life skills. Those
Sure.
are the life skills we learn.
Sure.
And a parent all of a sudden understands what it is. And maybe some kids listening too understand what we talk about. So I'm just suggesting that as a possible. It's because I just read something today in an educational journal about that.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
So you're going to remind us when we need to do that, right?
Well, just
okay.
We're going to talk about AHS in a minute. We just
Sir,
wanna say-
Asian Human Services, which
Yes.
they're changing their name to AHS, by the way.
Right, and then even if people say it's Asian Human Services, that still sounds like it's an off-banger. What are we talking about? So you need to put it in what you do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Asian Human Services currently supports 9 schools across the district. So, they come in, they support the elementary schools with 2 middle schools at this point, and they provide services to our Tier 3 students. That's their focus. It's a wraparound service that they focus on those students. So currently they see 48% of students in Tier 3, 22% of the students in Tier 2, and then 29% of students at a Tier 1. So they're providing social emotional learning to the classroom at a Tier 1 for whatever the building or the classroom needs at that particular moment. There is currently 1 vacancy that they are trying to fill, but one will be starting next. She's here now. She's here now. She starts today. So this just kind of breaks down at which building they are seeing the Tier 3 students. So which percentage of their time that they spend at the schools, the percentage of time that they're seeing Tier 3 students. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Again, this is just a repeat of the triangle, how they are supporting part of that Tier 3 triangle, and how AHS supports Tier 3. Next slide. And then these are the direct hours that have been accumulated over the course of the year. So direct hours is 1,450, indirect is 665, and school-wide support is 880. Under each one, there is a descriptor of what a direct hour looks like, what is indirect, and what is a school-wide support. Thank you. I tried to do this. Any questions? Yes. Sorry.
This is good evening. My name is Catherine Savino. I've been here a number of times since the beginning. Actually, I'm the Director of Behavioral Health at AHS, and I have with me a handful of my school counselors, so thanks for being here and sticking it out. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to maybe I can pre-answer some questions by clarifying some of the data. When we talk about Tier 2 students, we don't see any student as a tier, so it's the type of support. So through the MTSS process, they were determined not needing that intensive individual counseling, but more so their needs were able to be supported through a small group, social skills group, girls group, there's several others that we have, executive functioning group, and then from there they were assessed, and a lot of times their behaviors were, or their needs were met, and so then they were able to drop down to Tier 1 and not intensify to needing Tier 3 supports. So when we look at supports, we look at through the MTS lenses, what does the student need at that given time?
If the clarification, if we go back to those slides, is the total number of students serviced? Do we have that in the data? I didn't see. We see hours.
Yeah, the total number is in the pack, the board doc. Yeah. And I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Me either.
Throughout this school year, it was over 100 and... We're going to pull that up for you. Great. So throughout this school year, there were 155 students identified needing Tier 3 interventions. So they received individualized counseling and wraparound services. And when we talk about needing Tier 3 services, we're talking about students who may have a mental illness or may be in the process of developing a mental illness, where we are putting supports in place to help mitigate some of those symptoms and address some of those needs. We really are here to work with people with mental illness. SEL is obviously a huge part of it. SEL supports, social emotional learning supports, is there to support those with mental illness, so they create an environment where healing is a lot more, really it's in an environment that is safer to then find that healing. So providing the Tier 3 individualized supports in the school, that was with 155 students, and then 129 were 2-tier services received, so small groups, students who came in and out of small groups. Most of the groups were 6 to 8 weeks, and then they roll the groups over. And then classrooms, we don't have the exact number of students because it depends on attendance, but 37 different classrooms received that different SEL curriculum. So social emotional learning curriculum on life skills, Aaron's Law, different kind of friendships, anti-bullying awareness. Whatever the school really is asking for is what we're here to provide. Whatever the data suggests is needed, that's what our counselors are then tasked to provide.
And so I just want clarification too, and even for the public, because one of the things that I heard at the beginning of the year that I had a conversation with Deputy Cesario about, and we still continue to hear, relates to building of Medicaid and Medicaid services.
Currently, we have 0 students who are where we are billing Medicaid for. It is something that we are able to do. I can't cite state law off the top of my head, but it's one of the statutes where it's not a duplicatable billing service. It's something that we are able to do. We currently do not do that with our students. As we move into summer, just for full transparency, as we move into summer and our contract ends for liability purposes, we do gather the information. Parents are fully aware when it does happen. Parents never receive a bill for our services. They are never denied services. In fact, it helps us to know if they have Medicaid or not, because if they don't, it's more likely that they do qualify and they're not receiving the health services that they should be getting. So we then help them get on Medicaid. Whether we go through and bill that system or not is typically we don't with your district students. But we do like to know, because if it's a service that they don't have, it's their right to have Medicaid and to get health services through that. So we do want to help them get those services.
And we were specific to students, but you would is if the family decides to take on those AHS services.
Can you clarify that?
So I know part of AHS, one of the benefits of the program is that also sees the entire family.
Oh, absolutely.
And so if the family are receiving those services, then you would bill Medicaid.
Yes,
I want us to be clear about that.
Yeah, if we're seeing maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's the parent who needs the services, then yes, outside of the school day, if we're seeing students outside of the parameters of the school day in the community, which our counselors do go into the community, and sometimes they leave a Waukegan school, or they go from an elementary school to middle school or into high school, then we typically would, again, we haven't, but it is something that is within our right to do.
Okay. Any other questions from board or community? Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
So your 6th counselor, is that going to then include like all of the elementaries and all of the middle school, or just trying to, because I know that you're not at all of them yet.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if that 6th counselor will get them to all of the elementary and middle school, or will there still be a gap? And so I'm looking, are you looking to increase in your contract or remain the same?
So we have been asked to maintain the same number of staff. We follow the district's lead on number of staffing, so we've asked to maintain. The way that we've used that 6th position in the past is through a coordinator role, where she was seeing specific Tier 3 intensive students at schools where we were not at. So the district identified a number of schools for us to be at. Most of them were elementary to start. And then we did add middle schools as the need arose, especially during COVID, and some of the elementary schools, for whatever reason, weren't utilizing our support, so we moved it to a building who is more acceptable. So the sixth position right now, we are looking for someone who is fully licensed with LCSW or LCPC, so they can take on more intensive students, also supervise our current staff and build their capacity. In addition to, we just applied for the Youth Wellness grant through the state, which would expand through a grant, not through district funds. It would expand our exposure in the district as a whole to really promote youth wellness, physical health, mental health, work with students individually to link them with PCPs, link them to mental health professionals, which could thank you. Your primary care physician. Thank you. You're right with these acronyms. I'm from the school district and community mental health, and I work with all these systems, so thanks for the reminder. So if we do get this grant, which we hope we do, we wrote it specifically to serve Waukegan students, again, at no cost to your district. We would supplement some of that salary from the contract, build it into the grant, so then they can also oversee some of that work. And we can expand into seeing more middle school and high school students, because it's 11 to 21, and specifically AOEC. That's what we wrote the grant for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any? I didn't have any other board questions.
Well,
Mr. Riddle?
I guess I just wanted to clarify, when do you see most of your students? During school time or after school, outside of school?
During school time.
During school time.
That would be, during school time.
Okay.
We will be working during summer school, and we do anticipate that after summer school hours, because I believe summer school ends around 12-ish, we'll be seeing kiddos and families after that period of time.
And what percentage of the students would you say that you see with the parent, because you're working in elementary? Is always a parent with them, or 50% of the time, or none of the, almost?
I would say 25% and below, probably. They do come in for the initial appointments, but I think we have the same challenges that most programs have with getting parents.
Right.
But the initial conversation, the initial appointment is required, and we are trying to build in at least once a month. The younger the kiddo, the more parent engagement we want, but we also don't want to not meet the kid because the parent's not involved. But it is something that we're constantly working on.
Mm-hmm. And when the parent isn't involved, does the parent get some kind of follow-up? How does the parent know what's going on if you're working with a second grader, for instance, and the parent maybe had one meeting or it was a telephone conversation? Do they have some clue as to what's really happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. In some cases, they may not. Voicemails are left. During parent-teacher conferences, we try to be really present and catch them there. We go to the community meetings, community events to catch parents. But there are some cases that they know that they're seeing somebody. And we give them, tips and handouts and conversations to have with your child. We have treatment plans that we provide to parents. Whether they return that form signed or not is a whole other thing. But it is something that we are always working towards, and in every part of our agency, it's the same challenge.
Right, and then my other question would be on the language difficulties. Do all of your counselors, are they bilingual? How does that work?
We do not have any bilingual counselors at this time.
None.
It's very,
So you're not working with any bilingual children?
Oh, we absolutely are, yes. So we have, well, for one, Waukegan does a really great job, maybe despite some things we've heard, of having the interpreters, and we do utilize them in our buildings for our services. So that's been something that has been really helpful in how we've been able to collaborate with district staff. We also have our own language supports at the agency that we utilize. I mean, just today alone, we had someone from the office calling in with a clinician to have a conversation with a parent. So we won't turn anyone away regardless of their language. Sometimes parents' preference is to have someone native speaking, and that's absolutely their preference, and we'll meet that as much as we can, providing referrals, linkage supports. But for the most part, through interpretation supports, we work with families.
Okay, one final question, and then I'll let somebody else think. And that is, in other school districts, do you also work in the high school level? I know in our district you're working with elementary, but...
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, we do. It's less. It's interesting because it's less. We have less counselors in high schools than in the elementary, middle school level, but we definitely do and can provide supports to high schools.
Mm-hmm. And have we considered, Dr. Cesario, moving them as well to the high school as they, in some years in the future, as they work?
We haven't, but that was part of the strategy, is to have BAM and WOW middle and high, and then have these folks work also in middle and then in the elementary. But, I mean, we can discuss that. But that's how we laid it out initially.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Wozniak? Okay.
About language.
Thanks, Ken.
And then were there any questions from the audience? I see two hands. So first.
So my question.
Oh, do we got the mic?
Thanks for reminding us.
I don't think I need it.
Just for the people online, they can't hear you.
Thank you. So my first question would be, can you speak to the mental illnesses you're seeing? Second question would be, who's diagnosing these students? Third question would be, if you are not billing, do you need a diagnosis to work with them? Because my concern in that obviously would be that label then following the students.
Really good question. So currently, even though we are qualified to diagnose, because we are not billing Medicaid, we don't need to provide a diagnosis. For our evidence-based treatment, they like to have a diagnosis so you know what treatment to follow, but we don't require a diagnosis for treatment. And when I talk about mental illness, what we're seeing is we do have children who are disassociating, they're experiencing psychosis as young as, I believe, 2nd grade in one of our schools. We have students who are manic depressive, students who have criteria for personality disorder, even though that cannot be diagnosed at such a young age. Depression, anxiety is a really big one. PTSD is probably the most common, and when you have PTSD, it could look in so many different ways. ADHD as well. So we don't provide any document of a diagnosis. If a student comes with one of ADHD, sometimes the school team likes to have that, so it helps them to write the 504 or their IEP. However, it's not something that we're going to provide, one, because labeling a child ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, at 3rd, 4th grade isn't the most useful thing. We like to treat symptoms, we like to treat behaviors, and not necessarily just a diagnosable code that was developed in a really thick book and may not apply to the youth that we see.
And so if you are diagnosing them, are parents then given that?
Absolutely. Any time that we provide any diagnosis, even if it's just an assumption of one, we definitely want to tell the parent. We also want to talk it through with the child to help them understand what's happening. Obviously, the younger they are, we use developmentally appropriate wording. The older they are, sometimes it helps them to know what it is they're feeling, what it is they're experiencing, that there is something that it can be named. And sometimes naming it helps them to be able to really say, okay, this is something that's happening to me, and that means that there's something that I can do to treat it, to prevent it, to get into recovery. Like, that's our big, recovery is definitely something that is accessible for everybody. And so sometimes that diagnosis people like having. And so it's, if they want to know, okay, we can go through that, go through the criteria. If something that isn't helpful, then let's go with what's helpful, not what's going to harm.
Yes. Pass the mic on down. Mr. Ronan?
It's already on.
Sorry, don't usually talk this much. Just a couple questions. And I hear most of my input about AHS from the other social workers because I'm at the high school level, but because of my role, they come to me with questions and concerns, so I'm kind of sharing it with you in this instance. So I hope that's okay. Is there a certain number of students that an AHS, right, because BAM has like their 50 to 55, excuse me, district social workers have kind of a rough estimate, the counselors do. Is there a certain number that an AHS counselor should be maintaining?
It's how many ever we can fit into about a 6.5 hour school day. But some counselors aren't just doing individual Tier 3 supports. They are also doing classrooms and small groups. And so it's how many ever we can fit into the day. If family services are needed, then we also want them to be able to see them outside the community. We don't like caseloads over 25 to 30. Just as a general, that's best practice, and I see other social workers nodding their head like, yeah, that would be wonderful. So we try and maintain that, keeping in mind that they are also taking on other responsibilities, case management, wraparound supports. We have staff that have gone into homeless shelters to meet with families to see what resources are available, meeting with landlords, meeting with electrician companies or electrical companies, trying to not get utilities shut off. So sometimes one student doesn't mean 1 hour or 45 minutes. It could mean 3 or 4 hours in a week for that given week or that 3 or 4 week period when the family is in crisis. So there isn't a specific number.
Okay, then my next question is maybe you could help kind of problem solve a little bit, because I've heard from some of the elementary social workers where the AHS counselor, right, like one social worker has told me it's the 3rd year and they're on their 3rd counselor. I've had other social workers in the district tell me that their AHS counselor, right, the team in the building had recommended, can you help us with these classroom groups? Can you help us with these, small groups? And they said, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's where kind of the Medicaid came from, because then one of the responses to 2 different social workers was, and I see Jessica shaking her head, that no, I can't do that because I need to see individual and students that have Medicaid services. So that's where that comes from, is from the feedback I get from the other social workers. But I was just wondering what we can do to problem solve where, right, the counselors, if a team is asking, hey, this is what we need in the building, right, which is why they're not under like Bridget or Yvonne or something to give them the autonomy in the building. If they're asking, this is what we need you to do, but then the response is like, no, that's not what we're going to do, then it falls back on the social worker. Oh.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut. I was just nodding in affirmation with you. So, I think that's a really great point that you bring up, because we see that there's, at the high school there's some structural issues, right? And where articulation.
But this is the elementary level.
I know, I'm getting to that right now. Is that we heard from Principal Kirkwood, and when there is buy-in and when there is a structure in place, and I don't want to speak to any one school, right? But it works. We know that the implementation has worked better in some places rather than others, and that's okay. We know that all schools are in different places, and just like students are in different places. And so these are some of the things that we've been constantly working through. There's some other insights that both Kat and Stephanie can also share. We're well aware of some of those issues, especially at the elementary, and that's part of the reason why I mentioned, I alluded to a plan to really implement a structure to help facilitate at the high school the communication piece, because we identified that as an issue. Also at the elementary, there's also some strategies that we're also using to really, well, we will implement, we haven't yet, but then we've also removed people and we've had to rotate people, and Kat can speak to some of that because of some of the things that you had just mentioned, right? And it's not always a perfect fit at times, so I just want to acknowledge those are things that we're constantly talking and working through, and again, as I said before, it's a process. It's not working perfectly everywhere. In some places it's working better than others. Okay?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add from that. But if there are ever individual school situations, I have been very vocal from the get that you have my phone number, you have my email address. I don't ever want a staff member ever saying that they don't do something unless it's harming a child, obviously. But if it is under any kind of umbrella of SEL, we do it. We're here for the emotional wellness of the community. That's what any of our training, I say those words, I joke with my staff sometimes about like, take a drink every time I say emotional wellness and communication, because it is emphasized in our training. And it could be a miscommunication. It could be where we spent one day really focusing on tier 3 supports and what those look like, and that staff member got that stuck in their head and we're like, oh, I need to go and do that. So if that's something like one-on-one we want to talk about, I'm absolutely would love to troubleshoot that, and it could be a staff that we've already rotated through. But
yeah, and the other thing that I just want to bring up, because I would be remiss if I didn't, on behalf of my elementary social workers, is that there does seem to be over the years a lot of turnover in AHS, and even during a school year. Yeah. So when they start working with students or start doing small groups and then they leave, then that onus to work with that student, right? Social workers say yes to everything.
Absolutely.
They don't know how to say no, which is part of their problem, right? Is now they've picked up the caseload of the AHS worker who was hired to assist with that building. So I don't know what we can do as far as that turnover especially as it occurs during the school year, which is why I know we try and push for building the internal capacity because, I mean, this year is a little rogue. We had 2 social workers leave because of systems problems, but that never happens that they leave during the school year. But I don't know what we can do to help with that or how to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think it's an industry problem, especially with community mental health. It's an industry challenge that we always have with turnover. Well, not always have with turnover, but especially during this time of year. A lot of people, because of COVID, got really burnt out and thought they could commit to the role. And unfortunately, like whether they chose to leave or we helped them figure out that this wasn't the right position for them, we never want someone in the role that isn't going to be a good fit and isn't going to do the job to the best of their ability. Ideally, we would have a overflow of of clinicians waiting to take the job. So anytime someone left, there have been times staff have given us a month's notice, and that's wonderful. There's sometimes we've been given a week's notice, and I don't know how to fill a position in a week. If anyone has any ideas on that, I am very open to collaboration.
I have an idea because the council did have an 8 the counselors that you did have in an elementary school, when they first came on and we have our opening of our school, they were in my group for new counselors coming in. Even though I'm not directly the supervisor to the counselors anymore, they continue to ask me could they join meetings or support. We don't have elementary counselors in the district. For the district, we have middle school and high school counselors, but not elementary counselors. So I think they felt like they didn't have any support, especially from a person that is a certified counselor, to give them more professional development. So whenever they do hire the counseling coordinator on, I think we should collaborate with them for they can get some PD, understand what we do as certified counselors, and that would help them feel more as their as a team in the district. And again, it's a constant saying, we just want to help and support everyone, and if we are given that chance, maybe they won't leave if they feel like they have a connection with someone.
Absolutely. Yeah, anytime we could be folded into teams is why we really want to be on MTSS teams, student support teams. It helps with that because, when I go and interview people for this position, I do make it known that your building is your office. Like, that is your community. Those are your coworkers. We're not, even though we are AHS and we hire you and pay your salary, but we want you to be part of the school community. So as much as we can collaborate with principals and other admin in the building to bring us into the building, so we're another layer of support, that always helps. And I will say the staff are the happiest to when they're on school teams, where they're all working under the same vision, the same mission, and they are part of that team. Sometimes that's not the system, but I think that is something that we are growing towards in all the buildings that I've seen. From we started in 2020 to now, there's been a lot of growth in the elementary schools, I think. And I think that our roles in the schools have expanded, and it's been really nice to see the growth. And I think we're just getting started, quite honestly, that I think that this, partnership or not, I think that the schools are doing a really great job of understanding what mental health is and bringing parents in and community members in to really start to wrap around our young children. So when they get up to middle school and high school, maybe there's less referrals and less need for tier 3. It's always going to be there, always. But I think that's the goal of having us in elementary. So the more we can collaborate with different departments, the better this service will be for everybody.
Thank you.
I think that,
and then
I think that it's super important that AHS is on your school-based teams, and we do have currently right now 2 social emotional counselors at the elementary buildings, with the intention to have all 5 fully staffed for next year. So we are trying to support elementary schools in any way possible to support our social workers, because I know that they are doing everything they can, but the caseloads are getting so big. So if we can all just have AHS and social workers all collaborate at those MTSS team meetings so that we are providing what the students need. And I think that's the way that one of the things that we're going to grow as we move into next year.
So that hasn't been
two other buildings. I am a social worker in one school, elementary. I'm in Hyde Park. We don't have an AHS counselor, and we haven't had one since August. And when we had the one that we had, and granted, like you said, so we're going to get out for it, right? But when we had the one we had, she refused to do classroom groups, right? She refused to do small groups for us. She came in on the second or third day of school and said, I want your tier 3 people. And we're like, it's the third day of school, right? This is what we need. So I don't want to knock the program, but I do want to say we have to be transparent about what the experiences are, really, and again, work together to see how we can, what we can do to make this successful, because there is no such thing as too much support for our students. Right? So how can we...
That's been the message the whole night.
Make it work.
Yeah, I think everyone's saying the same thing, that we want everybody to have the same support, but we want to make sure that it's working. And that was one of the things I was speaking to before. It's on both sides, right? Sometimes it's a fit, sometimes it's a counselor, and AHS has their process for moving that person out. And again, sometimes it starts with the leadership. Some school-based leaders have a better idea of how to run that, and others are still learning. And so that's part of what Stephanie is doing in her work, is to assist where it's needed. And we haven't had it running up, it's not up and running at all schools perfectly. It's not. But there are a number of schools where it's working really well, and it's embedded within the culture. And that's what we're trying to do. And so thank you for sharing. We're aware of, we do talk, we're aware of where it's working, where it's not, and we have conversations. We just had a conversation yesterday about this. Kat and I did. Usually she talks to Stephanie, but I also wanted to talk to her about a few things. But yes, we're on the same page.
The new person, are they coming to Hyde Park? I'm just asking. You want the microphone?
So this 6th person is, I'm trying to think of schools that I know Kat and I talked about it about a month ago, so I have to go back in my emails and what we discussed. But there is some other schools, and it might change because the school year ends next week. So a month ago we kind of based it on population and the kids that were kind of tier 3 at those schools that had a bigger population. So, but for next year it can very well change. So I'm not sure just yet.
That sounds like a no, Stephanie.
I don't know yet.
Like
I'm going to look at your data. I'm going to look at your ODRs. I'm going to look at your attendance. I'm going to look at the caseloads. That's how I do it. So I will look at all those pieces to ensure that the HS kind of goes where they need to go.
Thank you.
So I appreciate, you got Ms. Leguizamo, final kind of comment or question on this topic.
Yeah, no, I just want to get some clarity from my perspective here. Do we have any school leaders, principals, that are not bought into these programs where we have tried to put it into the school buildings?
I think there's definitely different levels of participation. I'll say that. And I think that just like in a classroom, you have students who have different levels of ability. Some instructional leaders are more focused on the academic piece, and some are more focused on the SEL, and some are balanced. And I think it's a learning curve, because it's a different way to utilize those resources within a building. So long and short of it is, it works better in some schools because there are structures there. I mean, I'm not going to try to gloss over some of the issues that were discussed about the high school, and there's a need to develop structures there. And we realize that, and we've been talking about it, and working with people and taking the feedback to get better at that. And same thing at the elementary and the middle. And sometimes it's a matter of fit with the counselor. Sometimes people come in and they have the approach is just not the appropriate approach, and so we have to have a conversation with our partners about that. Same thing with BAM and WOW. Referencing the counselor with AHS and moving folks. Same with BAM and WOW. We've had to do that at one of the sites. where we had to make a decision, and we did that.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it
we're,
does.
we're all learning, and I think that's important, is that it's an ongoing conversation. Yeah, some people do it better than others. Some schools do it better than others. But again, it's part of learning how to incorporate this resource.
Awesome. So the other, oh, go ahead. Just keep that microphone, Nick.
I'm sanitizing in between each.
Oh, we appreciate that.
So I'm just line staff. I have been in the district a while, and I've been on a number of MTSS teams. And I would say the one thing that has been consistent on more functional teams where there's more buy-in is administrative participation in the MTSS process. Some real administrative participation, and you'll have better integration and you'll have more buy-in. I may regret having said this, but that's been my observation.
Yeah, it starts at the top, and that's exactly it. It starts with the leadership. Yep. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we got other items. Most of them are there for information. Unless the community has a question on this specific item, as I call them out, I'm going to ask the board to hold any of their questions unless it's extremely pertinent. Only comment I have about the HERO system is I know that there's a transition or the support plan for how next year is going to look, and that's one of the things is we want to make sure that as we're utilizing the HERO program, it's not just punitive, but we are rewarding and doing all of that and putting the budget and resources behind it to make sure that we're getting the benefit from it. So it's there. I support the renewal. I just want to be clear on that.
It should be part of the PBIS system. It should be used with fidelity, not in the manner that it's being used. I spoke with the union reps on that last week, that we need to have it, but we also need to talk about this. It is part of the plan that I keep mentioning, to be and to have one of our assistant principals really monitor the implementation, so that we know how well this is working.
Thank you. Yep, because we don't just, like, the majority of our students are doing the right thing, and we want to make sure that they're being recognized for doing the right thing, and that those students that may be struggling see it. So we
want to honor their work, and we want to do it the right way. Full agreement.
Then we got Hyde Park, again, that's a virtual training. We got approval of the multi-year agreement for Don Johnston at $37,800 per year. Total would be $113,400. The information there is attached. Are there any questions from the community on that item? Again, if not, we're going to move to G, which is the attendance presentation, National Association for the Education of Young Children Professional Institute. The price of that, along with the conference and information on the conference, is there.
Can I just say, I just want to honor Dr. Caesar, because she'll be presenting there, and that's a really great kudos to her, and so just want to share that for 2 seconds. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Deputy Cesario. And then finally, the Lewis Middle School No Limit ASCA School Counselor Conference. And lastly, what I will say to the team is, because we hear it and I've seen it, but and I know we talk about SBB funds, and we talk about sometimes it's just relearning, but we as a board, and I believe as an administration and organization, have said that we believe in PD. We understand the importance of internal capacity, but also learning for our stakeholders. So how do we give those opportunities to some of our staff that is on the ground? We've seen some schools that have taken entire teams. We see other schools that maybe are not implementing it or letting people know the process. But as we invest in PD for top talent, for top administrator, anybody, the board, we need to make sure that we're also giving those opportunities for our boots on the ground, as we keep saying, to learn as well. So if there's a way to communicate either those requests or next year, what's the process, or even a budget that we set aside to allow people to do PD, I think it's important in order for them to feel like they have those opportunities, and not only are they learning internally, we talk about internal capacity, which we love, but there is stuff that we may not be doing right, or other things that people are doing that's a little bit different, and we can learn from those outside individuals as well. Share the knowledge. So that's my only thing, is I support these, and next year let's make sure everybody understands the process for how they make those requests. With that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Mr. McBride. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. We're going to take just a, the next agenda is not too crazy, but we're going to take I'll say a 10-minute break, and then if we can get started with our Operation Services Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the retirement. Retirement dinner.
It's ours.
It's fine. You want to do it in another chair?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right. You like that? Okay.
I'll see. All right, so appreciate that. It's 9 o'clock, and the board promises that y'all will be out of here by 9:30.
If not earlier.
All right, but I told them that it's up to them.
What did you just promise?
But it's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the OSC meeting for May 17, 2022. If I can have a roll call, please.
Hannah? Mr. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Ewing?
Here.
Mr. Riddle?
Here.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak? Here. Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
All right, so we do have a quorum. The only board member that is not present is board member Hannah. We have our approval of meeting minutes, which is next, item 3A. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We are now at our information items. The information has been there. It is attached. I'm going to go through them one at a time, only to give the community the opportunity to ask any questions that they may have and the board members. But we got 1A, the facility rental waiver request for the family of Al Rogers.
Did we get a time on when that's going to be?
Yes, sir. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, staff, and community. So we are projecting a visitation of 11 a.m. and a service of 1 p.m. for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Wozniak?
And they'll furnish a COI, certificate of insurance before.
Yes, Ms. Chavez is working through them on the particulars. Obviously, this is happening relatively quickly, which is a little unusual, but because we have been in discussions with them and we've discussed with the superintendent's office to bring this forward, we will follow up with all the necessary documentation at our next board meeting.
Thank you. 5B is approval to attend the crisis prevention intervention training in Evanston. That information is there and presented. Renewal of Pace Regional Transportation Authority Agreement for 2022-2023. D, masonry repairs and fire escape improvements to AOEC. E, Brookside High School parking lot improvements.
Yay. Comments?
Yay.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
I did want to spend just a little bit of time on this one, just to bring it up on the screen so that the community can see it also at home, because this was something that has been long time sought, asked, and looked for, right? So I was just looking at the schematics, and I just wanted to fully understand when it comes to the opening that we're going to create on Brookside. So we're removing the sidewalk piece of that and opening that up. Is that anticipated for like parent drop off? Just trying to understand why is that curvature created and what that idea behind that was.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we do have staff in the audience to help assist with that. We have our operations team, Mr. Shepard, Mr. Kruckerberg, as well as Mr. Dolan, our civil engineer. So I would ask them to come up and speak to that. But Mr. White, if you could pull up on the screen the second attachment so everybody could follow along on the schematic that Ms. Leguizamo was referencing. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Harlan Dolan from IMEG, civil engineer for the project. Thank you for having us here tonight. This is the third phase of this project. Last year we did Monroe Avenue, and last fall we did the circle turnaround on the west side. And this final project to redo the parking lot here, we spent extensive time looking at traffic patterns. There's a lot of parent drop off and pickup. So we looked at how traffic was flowing and the existing site. We did extensive soil borings to see the condition of the stone, and then worked to do geometric plans. So the new geometric plan is out right now on the far west side. There is a very wide entrance, and you have that tree island there. It's very confusing. You have to actually border that off in the morning. We're trying to come up with a new site plan that will flow traffic and minimize the amount of maintenance you need to do. We're going to greatly increase the sidewalk between the building and the main drop-off lane. That will all become open concrete space now. It will not be as steep. We'll smooth that off. We will have, so on the south side there, that is a parent drop-off lane from the east. You will come in, be able to cul-de-sac around, go back out. That gives a stacking distance on both sides. Okay. Then on the north side, the part that we have parking there, we're increasing parking stalls, but we also have another drop-off lane there. You can come in on the east, come around, and then go back out, and that will give a whole nother row of parent pickup and drop-off. We're really trying to eliminate how much is happening on the street.
I appreciate that look there, and so the new entrance would be more towards the building there on the west side of that, and that's where I'm seeing the arrows going in and out, right?
That's actually moved further away from the building.
Okay.
So the concrete area is greatly increasing. If the existing entrance now, there's a median there with some big trees.
Yes.
The new curb is on the east side of that. That is going away. So that concrete area is expanding to cover that whole area. So we're moving it further away from the school. So that the one lane there will be an emergency lane that will come through, but the other two lanes will lead into the parking lot and will lead into a queuing line. You'd come in on the west, come down south. You could go all the way to the east and back out on the east. That's one queuing area, and then on the south side we have another queuing area with the cul-de-sac. So we're greatly expanding the drop-off and pickup to make it more safe. And there's sidewalks and access routes to each drop-off and pickup area, so we no longer will have kids walking through the parking lot and walking through traffic to get to pick up and drop-off areas.
Yeah,
Well, they're going to do that anyway, because you got cars parked adjacent to the building on the north side of the street, like on Leeds and all the streets going to cars parked there, so they got to walk across to get to those cars.
And by making this larger concrete apron area outside the main entrance of the school, we'll have a much safer access if they want to walk out to the street. We're trying to accommodate as much on-site drop-off and pickup as possible. You can't get it all, but it's going to be substantially improved, and that is exactly right. If you don't, there's a main 10-foot sidewalk running between the cul-de-sac area, so the kids can walk straight out to the east or straight to the north. We're trying to keep them from crossing traffic, but we can't there's just too many cars to get them all on site, but this will substantially improve the flow at those times.
Does this take up some of the current field space, or okay, this is all still pavement work, what's currently there, and just kind of redesigned?
Yeah, so the sidewalk on the south end and with the fields to the south, that is staying. Everything is just being reconfigured inside of there.
So that lane that's closest to the building, that is an emergency vehicle. No one's supposed to be sitting in that lane and parking there and picking up their kid in that lane.
Correct, and that is gated. There's a gate at the far north end and a gate by the cul-de-sac. So it's emergency fire. It'll be, so that is a gate. So
okay, because I can just see people parking there.
Just, I'm not clear. If you could explain, after hours, for instance, the high school is used for instance, the community. What is that called? What?
Like the band?
For bands and stuff, and families come and older people, and sometimes when we have our community concerts and stuff, they park buses right now along, with older people in them along that, or they drop them off right along that lane that comes nearest the school. Is that still going to be available for the handicap buses or the senior citizen smaller buses to drop people off by the entrance? And then my other question would be, I know it was all curb along there, and Charlotte and I were both following an old person coming out of the building one day, and they couldn't see the curb because it was at night, and when they stepped off, they fell Are you going to have curb there, or are you going to have a walk? Can you grade it so that it's so they don't have a curb? If they're going back to their car or bus right there, you know what I'm talking about? Is once you leave the main building.
Yes.
Whoops. How is that going to work?
When you come out the main entrance, there'll be several points of handicap access to be able to access through.
Okay.
And yes, you can pull up. You see the two gates that I'm talking about for that lane closest to the school.
Yes.
Gives you control. If you want to for functions, you can open them up. Let buses and they can actually drive right on through into that cul-de-sac area and come out. They can stage along there. So you can put buses in there. It just gates it off during daily functions for school.
But will you have, I guess is what I'm asking about the curb too, because right now it's all curb along there, and like you said, this lady fell right off she just was walking and didn't see the curb in the evening and
looks like the
stepped off, and I don't know if you could put a sloping kind of sidewalk like they do, like we do at corners, with those ribbings.
You want to be careful that if we did that along that whole stretch, then cars tend to ride up on the sidewalk.
Right up
so
on
you
it,
want to
yeah.
have some. We're trying to give a couple key access points that are wide that people can walk off.
Okay.
One of the other things that's is part of this project is new lighting. So there will be brand new lighting for the entire parking lot and that new concrete area that I said from the school to that first lane.
Okay.
So it'll be well lit with new LED lighting as well.
Great, that would help. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Wait, so the new lights would be around the new cul-de-sac area or around the sidewalk areas on both sides, or just?
They're going to be on the north side of the parking lot. There is a lighting plan on the back. They'll be on the north side of the parking lot. There will be one set of row of posts in the middle of the parking lot, and then they're going to be on the south side of the sidewalk by the athletic fields. So there's 3 rows there. And then there's a row of lights going down the middle of that new concrete walkway between the building and the school. So there should be a lighting plan on the back of the plans.
How many parking spots did we gain?
Oh, I think it was like 80 with the restriping.
About
I'd have
80
to look.
parking lots.
Gained or that'll
gained?
Gained. It was actually it was able to be reconfigured.
How many was that?
80. 80.
80. Okay, wow, that's good.
And so I know that, and it's not really listed. Oh yeah, it is. So as you see where the walkway is, it kind of goes up, and that right there is like the ramp to our auditorium back there. And there's I'm looking at the building piece of it, where our marching band, our band room doors are. So our marching band usually exits out of those side doors that are there, and then they use the walkways to march all the way down this way and down into Weiss Field. And so they kind of do need some wide spaces because they have the and I'm going to say it wrong, but everybody would think of it as the xylophones and other large band equipment. So has your team, I don't know if the team has spoken to the music department and the band department and what that looks like, and if that flow is still accessible for them?
This should actually greatly enhance that flow because we're widening that area, and it's all a concrete area.
And they have to like roll it down, so I want to make sure not everything is got too much curb, right? They need those access down ramp points.
Yes, and we'll double check because before we go to construction, see if there's anything we don't get. But even to the point of the main step to the school being eliminated, the new sidewalk will come up match flush. So we'll take that out. So grades are going to get much smoother because right now it's drastic from the school down to that first lane. We're going to taper it out more. So we're going to get more usable concrete area.
Wow.
And better slopes and a new wider sidewalk going all the way to the south as well.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I'm excited. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted to spend a little bit of time.
This project too is there's a water main that runs from the north underneath the side underneath this parking lot that's not in great shape. Part of this is to replace that, so we're not paving and then.
Yeah, right. I only laugh because that happens sometimes.
But try to plan for the best.
You do.
good that it came up and it was able to be put into the plan.
And is this concrete or is this blacktop?
The parking lot will be asphalt,
Okay.
blacktop.
And the sidewalk. And drive-up lanes and all that?
Blacktop. Now, and you can see the two different colors, the two different shades. The darker shade is more heavy-duty pavement, so
Okay.
heavy buses and heavy traffic. And the lighter shading where the cars are parking is standard duty pavement.
So,
And a new stone base, so it will be brand new.
again, I think it's a great thing.
Also with drainage, we're putting under drains in right now. There's not a lot of drainage in that parking lot. And as pavement cracks, water gets underneath it and causes problems. So there's some new storm sewer and under drains throughout the parking lot, which will help, extend the length of the parking lot.
Great. Awesome. So, I had a quick question, which I'm sure, but for clarity, will there be handicap parking? And will that be closest to the door?
That's this one.
Again, I just wanted to ask very, very explicitly. And then the only thing related to, for the superintendent and with the plan and design for Deputy Moulton is right now traffic flow for students. We've moved where students enter the building to Circle Drive. I don't have again, I think that's a building level decision, but one of the concerns that I had related to people going to Circle Drive is there's less parking there and we don't have visitor parking. I think it may be one spot. So if we're going to keep it at Circle Drive, then I would request that all staff who have badges and access and don't have to go through security park in whatever the new nice parking lot is. Or if we're going to redesign where students enter, that's made clear and communicated to parents and community. Is because even the change to Circle Drive still frustrates a lot of parents who for decades were used to going through the main door. So that's my only comment.
No, thank you for the feedback, Mr. Ewing. There will be a safety plan with advance notice that goes along with this, just to ensure that all the door locations that are going to be utilized for visitors, staff, and students are properly identified before the first day of school.
Thank you.
Excited.
And I just want to remind the board, we did apply for a $50,000 grant to support these costs through the Illinois State Board of Education. So this project is coming to fruition. We will be applying that to this. That was a specific application.
Thank you. All right. Asbestos abatement at
Thank you.
Greenwood, Washington, Whittier, Andrew, and the high school. We have the reports that have been listed. Everything is there. Motion to adjourn.
So
Motion by Ms. Wozniak. Second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed nay. It's 9:19. Get home.
Thanks, everyone.